Chapter 681. Yes, of course. Su raised his eyebrows. Since he had decided to participate, he would definitely participate. Yama, Merciless West, must join the Tian Yao school. It's time to go. It's almost time, Merciless West said leisurely. Okay. Su nodded. It was almost time. It would take some time to reach Zhongzhou City. Boss, let's eat some more meat before we go. Su Xiaoshui stared at the Green Emperor's sounding snake body and was reluctant to part with it. Su and Merciless West's eyes fell on the Green Emperor's sounding snake body. When he looked at Su and the others, the Green Emperor's eyes suddenly became desperate and fearful. Human, I choose to submit. I am willing to submit. In extreme desperation and absolute fear, the Green Emperor, an expert at the Origin Emperor realm and Demon Emperor realm, finally lowered his arrogant head, put down the pride of a Demon Emperor realm expert in his heart, and chose to submit. 11 Watch D. Authentic. Chapter U Section 5 above 8. Su was a little stunned. He didn't expect the Green Emperor to actually choose to submit. It was a little unbelievable. At this moment, Merciless West was even more shocked. A sounding snake expert at the Demon Emperor realm had chosen to submit in front of Su. This was definitely not ordinary. If you choose to submit, I can spare your life. From now on, you will be my mount. Su Yi's eyes darkened as he looked at the Green Emperor's real body, the sounding snake. Although he had savage beasts as his mounts, along the way, he had Xinyang Golden Demonic Falcon and Wolfbat as his mounts. However, he had never had a mount that truly belonged to him. An Origin Emperor realm, Sounding Snake was already an expert of the Demon Clan. There was no doubt about its speed and strength. Su wanted to take it as his mount. Mount, the eyes of the Green Emperor trembled. It chose to submit because of absolute fear and despair. However, part of the reason was also because of the aura exuding from Su. That terrifying aura caused the Green Emperor, who was a beast spirit, to tremble in fear, wanting to submit. However, to become a human's mount was definitely the most humble of all the subservience. Any creature of the Demon Clan felt ashamed to submit to a human, and even more humble to become a human's mount. Su looked straight at the Green Emperor's sounding snake with a domineering and majestic aura. You choose to be my mount, and I will spare your life. In the future, I will help you to go further and help you to transform. In the future, I will help you to leap over the Dragon Gate and soar into the sky. It will definitely not be too difficult. If you are not willing to submit, then let's continue like this. Your flesh and blood can be eaten, your bones and muscles can be refined, and your monster elixir can be used as medicine. It is not a loss for me. Su looked straight at the Green Emperor's sounding snake. Looking at Su Yi's figure, Shi Wuqing was a little moved. Su Yi's domineering and majestic temperament was inexplicably arrogant. Even with his vast experience, he had never seen a young man who could reach such a level. In the face of Ming Shi in the Demon Royal Realm, Su was able to subdue her with his momentum. Su was not an ordinary person. He was afraid that one day, Su would really become a dragon. Looking at Su the Green Emperor's eyes flickered. It was pondering over Su Yi's words. After all, at this moment, it could neither live nor die. Even if it died, its flesh and blood could be eaten, its bones and muscles could be refined, and its monster elixir could be used as medicine. However, if it submitted to this young man and became his mount, with this mysterious young man's help, it might really have a chance to leap over the Dragon Gate and soar into the sky. It wasn't just a choice between life and death. The young man before him had an invisible aura that made the Green Emperor's beast spirit want to follow him. This desire came from the depths of the beast spirit and bloodline. It was an eagerness to give a try. I'm willing to submit. The Green Emperor nodded and looked at Su Yi. It had chosen to submit, even if it meant becoming his mount. Su Yi's eyes relaxed slightly. For an expert like the Green Emperor to submit to a sounding snake in the Demon Emperor realm was naturally much better than just obtaining a monster elixir. Brother, wait for me for a moment. Su turned around and said to Merciless West, help yourself. Merciless West's eyes were still filled with unconcealable shock. Right in front of him, right under his nose, a sounding snake in the Demon Emperor realm had chosen to submit to him and become his mount. It was willing to become his mount in front of an Origin Spirit realm brat. If this was told to others, no one would believe it. Since you've chosen to submit, I'll set up something in your beast soul in your mind. It won't hurt you at all, so don't resist. He said to the Green Emperor. Although the Green Emperor had chosen to submit, it was still a Demon Emperor realm expert. In the mysterious space, it did not choose to submit directly like the Xianyang Golden Devil Falcon and the Wolf-Headed Devil Bat. Therefore, it was better to be safe and set up something. In the Heavenly Devil ancient scripture, there were many ways to tame a brute devil beast, including a devil spirit contract that was just below the Heavenly Devil Soul contract. A devil spirit contract could not only be used against brute devil beasts, it could also be used against any devil race. Once a devil race member was betrayed by a devil spirit contract, they could be killed even if they were thousands of miles away. The process of setting up a devil spirit contract was not complicated. It only required one to set up a strand of one's soul power in the brute devil beast body and condense it into a devil spirit contract. However, although the process of setting up a devil spirit contract was not complicated, it did not mean that it was easy. It required a lot of soul power and was extremely dangerous. If there was any mistake during the process, the consequences would be severe for both the devil race and the person who set up the devil spirit contract. At this moment, He was planning to set up a devil spirit contract on the Green Emperor. The first time he was setting it up, it was on a Demon Emperor realm expert. He was also rather nervous. The difficulty of setting up a devil spirit contract was related to the cultivation of the person who set it up and the person who set it up. If an Origin Emperor realm expert set up a devil spirit contract on a devil spirit realm brute devil beast, it would naturally be much easier. But at this moment, Yi was setting up a devil spirit contract on a devil emperor realm Mingxi expert. It was not easy to set up a devil spirit contract. One had to know that cultivating the heavenly devil ancient scripture was not an easy task. At this moment, it was even more difficult. The Green Emperor had no other choice. He had already chosen to submit. Although he was not particularly willing to be set up, there was no other way out. He tapped his foot on the ground and immediately flew out. He landed in front of the huge and ferocious head of the Green Emperor and sat down cross-legged. Huff! After taking a deep breath, he formed a seal with his hands. A soul fluctuation spread out between his eyebrows as he prepared to set up a devil spirit contract. Soul Controller. When he felt the soul fluctuation from Yi's body, Merciless West's expression was once again filled with unconcealable shock. At this moment, he realized that Yi was actually a soul controller, just like him. Walala. Chapter 682. His soul glowed with a crimson radiance and a powerful aura that made the Green Emperor's beast soul tremble in fear. What a powerful soul force. Goo goo. Merciless West was a terrifying soul controller. Although Yi had only released a wisp of soul power, she could still sense the abnormal strength of Yi's soul power. Merciless West gasped and couldn't calm down for a long time. The mountain range was high and low, rising and falling continuously. The energy of heaven and earth was dense here, and the clouds were near and far at the same time. It was like a fairyland. On the peak of the mountain, a young man stood. He was about 18 or 19 years old, with a perfect face with sharp corners, long and thick eyelashes, and a handsome nose. According to the news, Lu Ruashi was supposed to be the representative of the sacred mountain, but for some reason, it was changed to Naren Ruyu. Behind the young man, an old man about 50 or 60 years old appeared. He didn't cause any disturbance, but the appearance of the old man made the surrounding space tremble slightly. Cool 7G craftsman equals in head of the net. 1/1, Naren Ruyu. The young man whispered. Under his long and thick eyelashes, there was a flicker of light in his eyes. Clouds and mist lingered around the mountain range. The green peaks were like a refreshing, dense, and exquisite landscape painting. The young man had his hands behind his back, and his long black hair was like a clear pool that hung loosely on his shoulders. He wore a dark violet robe, and his body was simple to the point it didn't have any decorations, yet caused his deep facial features to seem even more intoxicating. Not to mention women, even men would take an extra glance at him. The sacred martial assembly. The young man whispered, his eyes shining. Green mountains rose and fell, stacked on top of each other, like the waves of the sea, endlessly extending to the distant end of the sky, full of heaven and earth energy. In the bamboo forest, the young man in white was about 18 or 19 years old. He casually picked up a falling bamboo leaf, as if he was thinking about something. "Senior brother," a voice came. A younger man stepped forward and looked at the young man in white with sincere respect and admiration. "Are you going to set off?" The young man in white raised his head and blinked his eyes. His long eyelashes flickered, and a smile appeared on his face. "In this sacred martial assembly, senior brother will soar into the sky and make our 3 Yuan sect famous in the central state." The young man's eyes flashed. The young man in front of him was only a few months older than him, but his strength was already unfathomable. In this sacred martial assembly, he would definitely soar into the sky and become famous in the world. Don't underestimate Shunjian Gate, Skyblaze Sect, Blue Cloud Sect, Qi Tianxian, Gong Qian Xing, and the others. The white-clothed youth raised his head, his eyes shining brightly. He was also looking forward to the Sacred Martial Arts Conference. Then, the white-clothed young man seemed to have thought of something, and his bright and spirited expression dimmed a little. A gentle breeze blew over from the bamboo forest, gently fluttering the corners of his white robe and his shiny black hair gently drifting in the wind. He said softly, "The people from the sacred mountain are probably not to be trifled with this time." The roars of beasts could be heard from time to time, echoing in the mountains. The mountain range was undulating, and the forest was full of heaven and earth energy. Strange flowers and plants were everywhere. On the cliff, the young man was dressed in a green robe with embroidered patterns on the collar and cuffs. His black hair was tied up, and his slender body was straight. He was handsome and had an innate noble temperament. Looking at him from afar, he gave people a feeling that he was too high to reach and that he was as low as a speck of dust. The young man was very handsome. The corners of his mouth were moderately thick, and it seemed that a dazzling smile would appear at any time. "Coo!" A spirit bird's cry was clear. A green spirit bird spiraled over. Its entire body was suffused with green light as it spread its wings. Flowing light fluctuated in a moving arc, and its eyes were like colored glass. When such a spirit bird appeared, the roars of beasts rose and fell in the surrounding mountains. It was as if they were surrendering and paying respects to their king. "Should we set off?" "Then, accompany me to the sacred martial assembly," the young man said softly. His voice was elegant and charming. The courtyard of the pavilion had an antique atmosphere. The girl was about 18 or 19 years old. Her eyes were like deep pools, and her soft black hair reached her ears. Her white dress was spotless, and her exposed skin was like a white lotus. She had a moving face and an outstanding temperament. She was like a fairy, not a speck of dust. "Senior Sister Ching Wei, Senior Sister Ching Wei," a clear and melodious voice echoed. A young girl came bouncing over. Her face was young and immature. She was only 14 or 15 years old, and her whole body was full of youthful aura. "What's wrong, Xiao Xiao?" The girl looked up and smiled. "Sect Master asked me to find you. He said that everyone is leaving for the Central State City." The young girl was very happy. She came to the girl's side and kissed her. "And I know. I will be there in a moment." The girl nodded and said calmly. In the secret room, the aura was vast and the light was dazzling. The vast aura calmed down for a long time. When the light gradually dimmed, a graceful figure sitting cross-legged appeared. It was a young girl with a charming face. Her skin was wheat-colored, and she had a small and straight nose. Under her long and curved eyelashes, her eyes were closed. After a while, her eyelashes trembled, and her closed eyes opened. Her eyes were big and bright. Her strange pupils had a faint golden color, which added a bit of charm. "I finally set foot here," the girl said to herself. She slowly got up. Under her tight clothes, her slender and straight legs were outlined. The curve of her body was incomparably moving. She had a bright and moving youthful aura. In the mysterious space, Merciless West looked at Sue E on the head of the sounding snake. The shock in his eyes had not subsided, and it kept fluctuating. How could Merciless West not see that Sue Yi's arrangement was absolutely not simple? This young man surprised him again and again. He never thought that he was a soul controller. It was no exaggeration to say that when he was at this age, his achievements were far from comparable. Sui sat cross-legged with his eyes slightly closed. His hand seals occasionally changed. Woo-woo. In his mind, Sui saw a bright and crystal-sounding snake, but the aura that erupted from its body was extremely shocking. The sounding snake was crystal clear, releasing a bright light. It was the same as the Green Emperor's body. Chapter 683. During this process, the Green Emperor could not resist at all. However, in this mysterious space, Sui was not afraid of any resistance from the Green Emperor. His soul power condensed into a seal in the Green Emperor's mind. As Sui's hand seals continued to condense, the heavenly Fey ancient scripture was activated. His body was surrounded by energy fluctuations, and a demonic aura lingered around his body. A terrifying aura filled with an ancient aura rose and fell like waves, as if it could suppress all directions. It spread out into the space, causing Shi Wuqing to be even more shocked. Roar! In his mind, the Green Emperor's guardian avatar was also trembling. It did not resist and allowed Sui to set up a demon spirit contract in its mind. When the demon spirit contract was finally formed, it fell into the depths of the Green Emperor's beast soul. A demonic aura flashed from the depths of the Green Emperor's beast soul. In the outside world, Sui's tightly shut eyes opened. His originally deep and bright eyes were filled with a whirlpool of light. The light flickered and gradually calmed down. At this moment, Sui's face was as pale as ash. The Green Emperor did not resist, and this kind of consumption made Sui barely able to hold on. After the demon spirit contract was set up, Sui's figure swept down and stood in front of the Green Emperor's sounding snake. Looking at the Green Emperor, whose eyes were still tightly shut, Sui was quite nervous. Although he seemed to have set up a demon spirit contract, he did not know if it was really successful. However, at this moment, Sui could feel that there was an invisible connection between him and the Green Emperor. Under his gaze, the Green Emperor's eyes slowly opened. Boom! At this moment, the mysterious space suddenly trembled for no reason. From the depths of this mysterious space, a mighty aura suddenly fluctuated. A divine light descended, accompanied by a boundless aura. The light filled the sky and suddenly enveloped the Green Emperor. Walala, a vast and astonishing aura, accompanied by flashes of lightning and rumbles of thunder, directly poured into the body of the Green Emperor. In an instant, the Green Emperor's battered body began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. A mysterious and ancient energy drilled into his flesh. Woo! The Green Emperor roared and stood with his head held high. He welcomed the envelopment of divine light and greedily absorbed the ancient energy. What happened? Merciless West was flabbergasted and dumbfounded. Under such an aura, even his soul was trembling. Oh, the Xinyang golden demonic falcon and the wolf-headed demonic bat roared as they prostrated themselves on the ground, gazing into the depths of the void as they prostrated themselves in worship. Sui was also shocked. Based on his understanding of the mysterious space, the Green Emperor seemed to be receiving some great benefits. Originally, the Green Emperor was suppressed in the mysterious space to the point that he couldn't resist. Now that he had submitted, after the demon spirit contract was placed in the depths of his beast soul, the mysterious space suddenly treated him differently. Could it be because of the demon spirit contract? Sui pondered. Perhaps it was because the Green Emperor now had a strand of his own soul force in his mind after he set up the demon spirit contract. This also seemed to have gained the recognition of the mysterious space. Suddenly, a great benefit descended upon him. The shocking movement seemed to be going on for quite some time. Suyi's face was pale. After consuming a lot of energy, he took the opportunity to stuff a yuan qi, replenishing elixir into his mouth, and sat down cross-legged to adjust his breathing. The shocking commotion continued. On the gigantic body of the Green Emperor, his flesh and blood were recovering. His bones were so deep that flesh could be seen, and his aura was growing stronger. Everything was mysterious and profound. A few hours later, the shocking commotion continued. The body of the Green Emperor was already in perfect condition. His body was shrouded in divine clouds, looking sparkling and translucent. He exuded an ancient aura. Even the four wings on his back were sparkling and translucent. Unknowingly, the aura of the Green Emperor's body had undergone an invisible change. The demonic aura was rich and terrifying. From his head, a thin layer of skin had peeled off, revealing a body that was increasingly crystal clear. Boom! The aura fluctuated. The aura on the Green Emperor's body rose like a rocket, soaring into the sky and vast and mighty in the mysterious space. What a strong aura! It seems to be transforming from the inside out. Merciless West was dumbfounded. The sounding snake seemed to be transforming from the inside out. Imperceptibly, it was strengthening from the inside out and breaking through. Everything lasted for a few hours before the shocking movement calmed down. Update LX fastest a quickly 3J. When all the movement calmed down, the aura on the Green Emperor's body stopped at the LV3 Demon Emperor realm. It was even close to the LV3 Demon Emperor realm. He stopped breathing and immediately looked at the Green Emperor. At this moment, the Green Emperor's body, the sounding snake, was coiled in the mysterious space. Its body was crystal clear, with a colorful green light and a demonic aura. Its eyes were slightly closed, and its body was covered with green scales. As its four wings flapped, its sound was like a bell, and its aura was astonishing. A huge change. He was shocked. At this moment, he felt that the aura on the Green Emperor was different from before. It was completely different from a few hours ago. This aura was not simply a breakthrough in cultivation strength. More importantly, it was a transformation from the inside out. At this moment, the aura that was emanating from the body of the Green Emperor made Su-Yi feel as though he had taken a huge step forward. It was as though he had crossed a huge chasm. In the air, the Green Emperor's body, the sounding snake, opened its eyes. In its eyes, there was a surge of shock, and it could not calm down for a long time. The Green Emperor knew best what benefit he had obtained at this moment. It was a kind of supreme opportunity. With a burst of green light, the Green Emperor turned into a human and landed directly in front of Su-Yi. Looking at Su-Yi in front of him, the Green Emperor was moved. He immediately knelt on one knee and said with awe and respect in his eyes, "Master, thank you for your help. Get up." Feeling the aura on the Green Emperor's body, Su-Yi was very satisfied. The Green Emperor was originally a Demon Emperor expert. Now that he had obtained benefits in the mysterious space, he had reached the third level of the Origin Emperor realm. His strength had soared again. More importantly, the invisible transformation had given him a boundless future. Now, besides his sworn brother, Merciless West, there was another Emperor expert by his side. The Green Emperor stood up and looked at Su-Yi. At this moment, his heart was in turmoil. If he had known that he would get such benefits after submitting, he would have done so without hesitation. Moreover, he had suffered so much. This place is very mysterious. It's a land of treasures. Merciless West was shocked. The Green Emperor's transformation had shocked him greatly. He had also adjusted his breath in this space and could feel that this space was extraordinary. It was a land of treasures. "Brother, we can set off now." Su-Yi smiled. It was obvious that he was in a good mood. Now that there were two Emperor experts by his side, he would feel sorry for himself if he was not happy. Merciless West raised his eyebrows and looked at Su-yi. Then he rolled his eyes at Su. Chapter 684. Su-yi didn't dare to leave little handsome Su in the mysterious space. Whoosh whoosh, the three of them left. Su-yi didn't ride on the Green Emperor. With his status and strength, it would cause a huge commotion if he appeared. Although he had two Emperor-class experts by his side, Deadly Yama, Shi Wuqing, and the Green Emperor, Su-yi knew that the Black Fiend sect was still in the barbaric demon forest. It was best to be careful. The direction to Zhongzhou City was roughly the same as the direction Su-yi wanted to go to the Chaos Realm. Merciless West knew the address and didn't want to attract too much attention. The three of them traveled through the savage demon forest and headed to Zhongzhou City. Along the way, Su-yi followed closely behind Merciless West and the Green Emperor. Merciless West seemed to be testing Su-yi. Seeing that he was following closely behind, he gradually increased his speed. As soon as Merciless West sped up, Su-yi followed suit. Yuan Qi surged under his feet as he used the Fuyao's 100 transformation steps and followed closely behind. Merciless West was shocked. Although he didn't use his full strength, he knew how much strength he used. He was testing Su-yi's speed. Normal Yuan-Jun realm cultivators wouldn't be able to keep up with his speed. However, Su-yi was following him closely. More importantly, Merciless West thought that Su-yi was only forcefully following them. He was relying on his Yuan Qi and wouldn't be able to last long. But 2 hours later, 6 hours later, Su-yi was still following closely behind. His face didn't seem to have paled much. Merciless West couldn't help but be shocked. It required such a vigorous Yuan Qi to be able to last so long. Woo! Savage demon beasts occasionally appeared in the dense forest. When they sensed the aura of the Green Emperor and Su-yi from afar, they immediately retreated and didn't dare to approach. There's a small town ahead. I'll go and buy some herbs and wine. Suddenly, Shi Wuqing stopped and unconsciously pursed his lips. The liquor bug was acting up again. The wine in the gourd had been completely emptied last time. Su-yi smiled. He knew that Merciless West was addicted to wine. He nodded and said, "There are many herbs in the space. Let me know if you need them." "It's okay. It's not hard to find the herbs needed for wine." Merciless West shook his head. The space was a treasure. Based on his understanding of Su-yi didn't hold back in front of him. He didn't even hide the space. The small town wasn't small. There were many small towns like this in the savage demon forest. When Su-yi, Merciless West, and Green Emperor appeared in the small town, all of them retracted their aura. The broken sword on Su-yi's back was tightly wrapped, like a short stick. The streets were bustling with activity. Many people were hawking all kinds of cultivation resources, elixirs, and weapons. The shops along the street were also dazzling. There were wine shops, restaurants, and even shops selling clothes. Of course, at the end of the street, there were also seductively dressed women. Their white and deep cleavage were exposed, and their thighs were exposed all the way to the top. When they saw a man, they would throw a coquettish glance that everyone knew. To the people in the barbaric demon forest, especially these men who lived on the edge of a blade all year round, this kind of temptation was simply irresistible. Many people came to this kind of small town to settle down. Other than to deal with the gains from selling their bodies, it was also for these sexy and enchanting women. "Little handsome, do you want to play with me? You're so young. I can give you half price." A middle-aged seductive woman puffed out her chest and threw flirtatious glances at Su-yi. It was rare for such a young man to appear in this town. Facing those bearded men who didn't know how to flirt, such a young man was undoubtedly very attractive to her. "Don't mess around. I'm still a virgin." Su-yi immediately threw it aside. He didn't want to give his first time to such a woman. "Virgin? That's even better. I'll give you a big red packet for free later." Hearing this, the seductive woman's eyes lit up. She was like a wolf that saw its prey. Her saliva almost flowed out. "Auntie, don't mess around." Su-yi rolled his eyes at the seductive woman. "Oomph." Hearing Su-yi call her auntie, the seductive woman's face suddenly turned ugly. "Let's go." Su-yi didn't want to stay for long. He immediately left. It was better to stay away from this woman. He couldn't help but have goosebumps. You're still a virgin. Merciless West had a smile on her face. She looked at Sue-E and couldn't help but tease him. What's wrong with being a virgin? Sue-E rolled his eyes at Merciless West. Little virgin, help yourself. I'll go buy some medicine and wine. Shi-Wuching laughed heartily and walked into a trading company. Sue-E rolled his eyes and looked at the street. Then, he walked into a clothing shop. It wasn't easy to find some broken vitality stones on him. He didn't know where they came from, but he bought a few clothes. Then, Sue-E also walked around a few shops that sold cultivation resources. However, with Sue-Yi's current eyesight, there wasn't anything that Sue-E was interested in the shops in this town. Therefore, he didn't buy anything. The Green Emperor was always by Sue-Yi's side. Where's brother? Since there was nothing else to shop, Sue-E walked to the street and looked for Merciless West. Young man, I can tell that you have good eyesight and come from a big sect. I have something with me. It has an extraordinary origin. A thievish-looking old man in his 50s sneaked to Sue-Yi's side. He purposely half-revealed a scroll in his arms. He lowered his voice and said mysteriously to Sue-Yi, I didn't want to sell this item, but there's an emergency. Treasures can only be obtained by those who are fated. Rumor has it that this item contains great benefits. Name a price. Find someone else. Sue-Yi raised his eyebrows. It was obvious that this was a scam. Young man, look again. I definitely won't lie to you. The old man didn't give up. If you don't scram, you'll die. The Green Emperor's faint words came out of his mouth. A formless aura fluctuated, causing the surrounding air to suddenly turn cold. The old man's hair stood on end for no reason. His soul shivered, and he immediately left. With his eyesight, it wasn't difficult to tell that these two people were not to be trifled with. #EB, #starter. You've worn out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it by chance. A cold voice came. At this moment, a wave of aura fluctuated, bringing with it a murderous aura. Then, it surrounded Sue-Yi and the Green Emperor. Chapter 685. Leader, that's him. That's the kid. A big guy stared at Sue-Yi from afar. He still had some lingering fear in his heart. It was this kid who had crippled all of them. Sue-Yi's gaze swept across the crowd. There were at least 40 people with strong auras. Some of them were Yuanjun stage cultivators. Looking at the man who spoke, Sue-Yi already knew who he was. It was the small group of mercenaries that he took care of before. Green Emperor didn't care at all. He glanced around and stood quietly beside Sue-Yi. Who are these people? Sue-Yi asked. He didn't care at all. It's Blood Edge mercenary group. On the other hand, following the commotion on the street, a large crowd of onlookers immediately surrounded the scene. These two are so unlucky. Blood Edge mercenary group is ruthless. I heard that a kid crippled a lot of Blood Edge mercenary group's members. Could it be this kid? Everyone gasped for breath for Sue-Yi and the Green Emperor. Everyone knew that the Blood Edge mercenary group was known for their ruthlessness, and they had a bad reputation in this area. Kid, cripple my men? You must be tired of living. A big man stared coldly at Sue-Yi. So many of his men were crippled by a young man. If they didn't get back at him, Blood Edge wouldn't be able to survive in this area anymore. You've come to mess with me again and again. Don't live anymore, Sue-Yi said to Green Emperor. He didn't even bat an eyelid. Gotcha. The Green Emperor disappeared, and when he reappeared, he was already in front of the man with the strongest cultivation in the Blood Edge mercenary group. He slightly bent his fingers, and a green light flashed from his fingertips. With a cracking sound, the man didn't even have time to react before his neck and head were separated. Blood splattered everywhere, but it didn't touch the Green Emperor at all. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Streaks of eerie cyan light filled the air. They carried a terrifying power and pierced through the bodies of the Blood Edge mercenaries without any hesitation. Bang, bang, bang. The dozens of Blood Edge mercenaries, including Yuanjun realm cultivators, exploded into a mist of blood. Dozens of people were turned into meat paste in the blink of an eye. This scene made the people in Barbarian City unable to recover from their shock. The cyan-clothed middle-aged man was actually this powerful. Blood Edge had stepped on a steel plate this time. They had offended someone they shouldn't have offended. Don't waste it. He picked up a few dimensional bags from the ground. He couldn't let them go to waste. Why aren't you leaving? An old man in a gray robe walked out from the crowd. He glanced around, and there was a slight fluctuation in his eyes. You are? He was surprised. He didn't know who this person was. He didn't seem to know him. Most NS new TD chapter 5 on H. It's good that you don't know me. Let's go. The old man's voice changed slightly. It was Merciless West's voice. It's you, brother. He was surprised. He couldn't tell that the old man was Merciless West at all. Whoosh, whoosh. The three of them then left the small town and swaggered off. The rest of the people in the town didn't come back to their senses until a while later. They could only feel sorry for Blood Edge. However, no one cared too much about it. In the barbarian demon forest, this kind of thing was too common. Who knew how many people died every day? Every day, there would be factions that were destroyed and new factions would emerge. This was too common. Brother, is this some kind of disguise technique? That's amazing. Along the way, a few shadows passed through the forest. He was very interested in Merciless West's appearance. It was not like the disguise he remembered from his previous life. It's just a small trick. You can call it a disguise technique. Although it has some uses, it's nothing special. Wuching nodded. He was on a central continent city. In order to avoid some trouble, he changed his appearance a bit. Is that so? Can you teach me this disguise technique? Suyi's interest was immediately piqued. This appearance-changing technique had many benefits. Even if he didn't want to meet the people from the Divine Sword sect and the Sacred Mountain in this sacred martial assembly, it would be much more convenient if he knew this appearance-changing technique. I can teach you. Merciless West looked at Sui and nodded. In the next few days, Sui, Merciless West, Green Emperor, and Little Handsome Su went to Zhongzhou City to learn the disguise technique. The disguise technique wasn't difficult, but it wasn't easy either. The most important thing was to hide one's aura completely. Sui practiced the Origin Supreme technique, which made it a lot easier. As for this disguise technique, it also required some external assistance and some simple medicine. This disguise technique had many uses. Unfortunately, Sui didn't know how to refine disguise pills, so he could only ask Merciless West for some. Fortunately, these pills weren't anything precious. The distance from the barbaric demon forest to Zhongzhou City was very far. Fortunately, Suyi's speed wasn't slow. It was just that the barbaric demon forest was in between, and there were all kinds of dangers and fierce beasts along the way. However, with the Green Emperor and Merciless West, even Sui and Little Handsome Su's aura, it was enough to scare away those wild beasts. Within the brute demon forest, this was the first time Sui had crossed it so openly. In a few days, other than a few small towns, Sui actually saw 2 big cities. The magnificent buildings were like islands in the boundless mountain range, and it was very lively. This made Sui very surprised. Later, he found out from Merciless West that there were many big cities like this in the barbaric demon forest. One must know that the barbaric demon forest wasn't a barren land that stretched as far as the eye could see. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many big forces. 7 days later, Merciless West told Sui that they were about to leave the barbaric demon forest. After crossing a few big cities, they would be able to reach Zhongzhou City, where the sacred martial assembly would be held. From Wuching's words, Sui had gained some understanding of the central continent city. It was rumored that the central continent city was the largest city in the entire central continent. Its area was boundless, and it was bustling with activity. Before reaching Zhongzhou City, Sui could already feel the liveliness of the sacred martial assembly. The nearby cities were already bustling with noise and excitement. Many people were heading towards Zhongzhou City. In the sky, there were many flying wild beasts that carried many people. Their destination was obviously the direction of Zhongzhou City. Chapter 686. Then let's take the teleportation gate. Sui said, the teleportation gate should be similar to the one in the Myriad Sword battlefield. If they could reach Zhongzhou City quickly, it would save them a lot of time. Do you think it's a casual ride? If it's a short distance, it will cost about one low-tier yellow-grade elixir. The distance to Zhongzhou City isn't too close. I'm afraid the three of us and this bird will need at least 10 yellow-grade elixirs to get down. Merciless West rolled her eyes at Sui. What's so expensive? Sui clicked his tongue. 10 yellow-grade elixir was priceless. It was equivalent to cutting off his own flesh. Moreover, Sui didn't have that many yellow-grade elixirs and primeval stones on him. Riding a bird also costs primeval stones. Sui rolled his eyes. A bird actually costs primeval stones? I'm not a bird. Su Xiaoshui glared at Sui, looking very wronged. You're a dignified origin emperor. Don't tell me you don't have any wealth. Sui had his eyes on Merciless West. As a dignified origin emperor expert and a soul controller, how could he not have any wealth? Merciless West looked a little embarrassed. He was a soul controller and an origin emperor expert, but he was just a rogue cultivator. He really didn't have anything good on him. Sigh. Looking at Merciless West's expression, Sui already knew the result. He was afraid that Merciless West was a rogue cultivator. Just like the rumors said, rogue cultivators were usually very poor. As for the Green Emperor, Sui didn't even ask. Previously, he searched the Green Emperor's body but didn't find anything. He was even poorer than Merciless West. Then what should we do now? We still have to cross a few cities. If we walk, I'm afraid it will take a lot of time. Sui frowned. Master, let me bring you to Central Continent City. The Green Emperor spoke. He was a mount to begin with, so this was part of his duty. You're too eye-catching. You can't. Sui shook his head. With his cultivation and strength, he did not know what kind of trouble he would cause if he brought a Demon Emperor realm out with him. It would not be good even if he was targeted. Although he had the Green Emperor and Merciless West by his side, Sui knew that it was better to be careful. Compared to the major forces participating in the Sacred Martial Arts Conference, the strength of the Merciless West and the Green Emperor could not be considered as rampant. The wolf-headed demon bat and the Xianyang golden demon falcon in the mysterious space were equally eye-catching. Moreover, the people of Xinjiang Gate would definitely recognize them. Sui did not dare to summon them at this time. What do you think we should do? Merciless West asked Sui. If he was alone, it would not be a problem, but if he had to bring this guy along, it would be a little tiring. I have an idea. Suddenly, Sui smiled. A meaningful smile flashed in his eyes. A moment later, in a remote place where there were not many people, Sui used the art of disguise to transform himself into a simple and honest-looking young man under the surprised gaze of the Green Emperor and Merciless West. He looked to be in his 20s. The heavy sword on his back was also kept in the space bag by Sui. He also changed into a set of yellow robes that he had bought in the small town a few days ago. His black hair was tied up at the back of his head. He had completely changed his appearance. However, this art of disguise could only change one's appearance and temperament. It was not enough to change one's height and body shape. However, it was enough for Sui. Let's go. Sui touched his face and let the Green Emperor and Merciless West take a look. After confirming that there was no problem, he left. Then, in a remote mountain range, Sui, Merciless West, and the Green Emperor appeared. What are we doing here? Merciless West was puzzled. She did not know what Sui was up to. You'll know in a while. Sui chuckled. Indeed, after a while, Merciless West found out about Sui's intentions. They waited for a group of people from an unknown sect to pass by. A flying savage beast mount at the 9th level of Origin Spirit Realm was directly snatched by the Green Emperor. Among the group of people from the sect, there was an Origin Void Stage expert who led many young disciples. However, how could they be a match for the Green Emperor? The Green Emperor followed Sui's instructions and did not kill them. He only snatched a savage beast mount and subdued it before leaving. What is going on? The group of disciples were dumbfounded. An expert had suddenly appeared and snatched a savage beast as a mount before swaggering off. How despicable! The group of young disciples were full of vigor and were furious. Be content. That expert only snatched the mount. The Origin Void Stage expert still had some lingering fear in his heart. He was already very satisfied. So this is your idea? On the back of the flying savage beast, Merciless West, and Su Yi looked helpless. A real man does not care about trifles. I'll just return it to them later. Su Yi smiled embarrassedly. He really could not think of any other way. With a flying savage beast, everything was naturally much more convenient. On I-8, there was still a long distance to Zhongzhou City, but it was already bustling with noise and excitement. There were more and more savage beast mounts in the sky looking at Zhongzhou City. It was Su Yi's first time seeing so many savage beast mounts. It was very shocking. So many people. Su Xiaoshui poked his little head out of Su Yi's embrace and looked around curiously. He was full of curiosity about everything. So many people, and they all looked very strong. Su Yi sighed. They had not yet reached Zhongzhou City, but they could already see all kinds of groups and some extraordinary young people. It was enough to show the influence of the sacred martial assembly. Making a fuss over nothing. You've never seen the world. What is this? Merciless West was somewhat disdainful, but there was a hint of pride in her eyes. She said to Su Yi, "These are nothing. At most, they're just some third-rate or fourth-rate forces. The real big sects will not come so quickly. If they want to come, they will directly send a spatial portal to Zhongzhou City or have a big show." Is that so? Su Yi raised his eyebrows. He still did not have enough experience. However, don't look down on these third-rate or fourth-rate forces. Some of them have a long history and once bloomed in Zhongzhou City. Merciless West said, "Roar." Suddenly, a shocking beast roar came from the sky in front of them. Then, an extremely powerful and terrifying fluctuation came, causing many savage beast mounts in the surroundings to tremble and almost fall. The savage beast under Su Yi's feet also trembled. The terrifying aura in front of them was very powerful. Following the gaze, Su Yi looked over. A huge savage beast appeared in front of them. It had a huge body and a single horn. Its entire body was shining with golden light. It was several zhang tall, and its eyes were like lanterns. Its body was emitting a shocking aura. Golden light unicorn. Su Yi's eyes moved. This was actually a rare golden light unicorn. It was definitely a savage beast of the demon race. The aura of this golden light unicorn had reached the demon illusionary realm. Get out of the way. Chapter 687. Roar. The golden unicorn roared. Golden light overflowed, and the roar was like thunder, shaking the mountains and valleys below. As the roar reverberated, the savage beasts and people along the way hurriedly avoided it, not daring to block its path. Upon closer inspection, a young man in his 20s sat on the back of the golden unicorn. His black hair fluttered in the wind. His eyes were sharp, and he had an extraordinary temperament. His robe danced in the wind as he sat on the golden unicorn. He looked majestic and mighty. Behind the golden unicorn, there were 9 identical fierce wind blood wolves. They had wings on their backs and were emitting an icy aura. Their bodies were emitting a murderous aura. They looked ferocious, but their bodies were strong and vigorous. Behind each fierce wind blood wolf, there were many figures with extraordinary auras. They were obviously experts. They seemed to be escorting or protecting the young man. What a powerful lineup. This feeling gave Su Yi a great impact. Although Su Yi had seen the foundation of the major sects of the Xinjiang Gate, this was the first time Su Yi had seen such a lineup. The mount was a golden unicorn of the demon illusionary realm. There were many experts escorting the young man. His aura was astonishing. He was probably an important disciple of some major sect. "You're courting death by blocking my path." Just as Su Yi was shocked, the golden unicorn had already arrived in front of him. The young man shouted arrogantly and waved his hand. A golden whip with a sharp edge whipped towards Su Yi like lightning. "You're courting death." The Green Emperor's face darkened. He had obtained great benefits from mysterious place. He had transformed from inside out and had completely surrendered. He was beside his master. How could he allow Su Yi to be harmed? "Let me." However, before the Green Emperor, Su Yi's face also darkened. This young man was too arrogant and rude. Su Yi was only a young man after all. The young man's arrogance had angered Su Yi. Swish! Forming a handprint. A wisp of crimson yuan qi shot out from Su Yi's fingertips like a bolt of crimson lightning, immediately colliding with the sharp tip of the long whip. When the two collided, yuan qi surged. Rays of light swept out and separated upon contact. A plus update, Xenu most, too fast, \up 7 square root, the long whip's sharp edge was directly shattered and scattered. It also lost its accuracy and retreated. On the back of the golden light unicorn, the young man's expression darkened. With a flick of his sleeve, the long whip rotated and a great force charged over along the long whip, causing the young man's body to tremble as he was completely unprepared. Roar! The golden unicorn seemed to see that its master was at a disadvantage, and it suddenly roared. Golden light exploded, and its thick, giant hooves seemed to be about to trample Su Yi. Bastard, how dare you! I'll roast you. Su Yi flicked his sleeves. At this moment, with his appearance-changing technique, he wasn't afraid of exposing his identity. There were also 2 Emperor-level powerhouses by his side. How could he be bullied? He secretly operated the Origin Supreme technique, and a red light flashed in his eyes. Roar! Sensing Su Yi's aura, the golden unicorn was instantly afraid for no reason. Its momentum weakened a lot, and its fierce eyes stared at Su Yi in surprise. The sudden incident immediately attracted the attention of the surrounding people. The group of powerhouses behind the young man also looked surprised, as if they didn't expect that someone would dare to fight back and stop their young master. At this moment, the young man was the most surprised. No matter what, Yangming did not expect that an ordinary-looking young man would block his path and even attack him when he rode the golden unicorn and brought a group of powerhouses out to handle some matters. He was supposed to be majestic and mighty. If it was a powerhouse who blocked his path, Yangming would feel better. However, it was a fellow who seemed to be younger than him who dared to block his path. How could he accept this? How dare you? Several loud shouts sounded from behind Yangming almost at the same time, and several figures were already fluctuating with powerful auras. Yangming flicked his sleeves, indicating that the people behind him didn't need to interfere. He took a step forward and stepped directly on the golden unicorn's back. His golden eyes stared straight at Su Yi, and he said in a deep voice, "Kid, tell me your name. Which sector are you from? Why should I tell you when I'm checking your household registration?" Su Yi also stood on his mount and said faintly. He was also quite surprised when he sensed the former's aura. He was actually at level 8 Origin Spirit stage at such a young age. With such talent, compared to Gongqi, Gu Chunyu, and the others, he was also a genius. "Because I never kill nameless people. Tell me your name, and I'll kill you today," Yangming said in a deep voice, and there was an undisguised, killing intent in his eyes. Since he dared to block his path, he would kill him. He could make a name for himself in this sacred martial assembly without fighting. What big words. Remember, Isu, from the Bawang sect. Su raised his eyebrows. Of course, he couldn't say his real name, and he couldn't expose Tian Yao School or Xinjing Gate. Su Yi was Isu, and he didn't change his name. He also used this name when he was in Tian Yao School. As for the Bawang sect, he came from the Overlord Fist of the Origin Supreme technique. He used a disguise technique, and it just so happened that he could participate in the sacred martial assembly with a new identity. The Bawang sect? I've never heard of it. Isu will no longer exist in this world, Yangming said coldly. As soon as he finished speaking, he stomped his foot, and a golden light burst out. His figure flew out, and at the same time, the light under his foot expanded. A giant barbaric beast illusion of 100 feet tall was formed. It was vivid and lifelike, and it had 2 heads like an eagle or a condor. Its feathers were like golden scales, and its aura was shocking. Yangming stepped on the illusory figure of the barbaric demonic beast, which was formed from his vitality. He looked straight at Su Yi and said, "Do you want all of you to come out and die? Or do you want to die today?" Boom, boom, boom. As soon as Yangming finished speaking, a total of 5 figures flew out from the back of the barbaric beast behind him. The aura of the five figures fluctuated, and the void was distorted for no reason. The person in the front had obviously stepped into the Origin Emperor realm, and the other four were powerhouses in the Origin Void realm. Several auras locked onto Merciless West and the Green Emperor. If Su-Yi did not dare to fight alone, the experts would directly kill the three of them. The auras locked onto them, and the Origin Emperor realm cultivator was only at the first level of the Origin Emperor realm. Whether it was the Green Emperor or Merciless West, they did not pay much attention to him. Is this kid so arrogant? He's too arrogant. Little handsome Su poked his head out from Su-Yi's embrace, and his little eyes were filled with disdain. He did not pay much attention to it, but the arrogant attitude of the former made little handsome Su very unhappy. How arrogant! Chapter 688. Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, Su-Yi's figure dashed out. Crimson light shone from his back as he used the Azura's 100 transformation steps, condensing a pair of Yuan Qi wings and stepping into the void. Seeing Su-Yi's method, Ouyang Mingjie was slightly surprised. However, he was experienced and knowledgeable, so he did not find it strange. Such a method of condensing a pair of Yuan Qi wings was not particularly rare in the current world. You have some guts. You must be going to participate in the Sacred Martial Assembly. However, I have to tell you that the Sacred Martial Assembly is not fated with you. You will stop here. Remember, you will die at my hands. As soon as his cold words fell, Ouyang Mingjie made his move. The strange beast formed from Yuan Qi beneath his feet flapped its wings and swept up a storm. Golden light shone resplendently, and its aura was fierce as it enveloped Su-Yi. Behind Ouyang Mingjie, several experts stood guarding against Merciless West and Green Emperor who were behind Su-Yi. However, Merciless West and Green Emperor stood on their mounts and had no intention of making a move. From the aura that Ouyang Mingjie was releasing, they knew very well that Ouyang Mingjie was no match for them. It would be too late for that kid to regret it. Su-Yi made his move. As he condensed a handprint in his hand, the Yuan Qi beneath his feet surged like a tide. Instead of retreating, he advanced. Fire-attributed Yuan Qi covered his palms, and red palm prints condensed. Blazing fire sky gathering palm. With a deep shout in his heart, Su-Yi's handprints immediately shot out, turning into dense palm prints that enveloped the former's body. This was the blazing fire sky gathering palm, which came from the true demon spirit of the heavenly demon scripture. In an instant, the dense palm prints enveloped the former, as well as the wild beast formed from Yuan Qi. In a short moment, the dense palm prints completely enveloped the former's body. The surroundings were filled with blazing palm prints. Ouyang Mingjie's expression changed drastically. Everything had completely exceeded his expectations. To think that the youth before him would actually possess such tyrannical strength. He no longer held back the aura of an 8th-level Origin Spirit Stage expert, while the long whip in his hand that glowed with golden light shot out like a golden python. Bang, bang, bang. The palm prints that filled the sky exploded, and the primordial Qi-formed savage beasts under Ouyangming's feet were directly smashed into pieces. At the same level, Su-Yi had never met a true opponent. What's more, Su-Yi had successfully cultivated the Great Void Immortal Ocean twice. Coupled with his strength at the 9th level of the Essence Spirit Realm, he could even contend against a true Yuan Jun stage practitioner. One could imagine Ouyangming's outcome at this moment. Swish! A golden whip lashed out like a golden python. Its aura was sharp and terrifying. The whip was a treasure, and its level was not simple. Su-Yi's eyes darkened as red Yuan Qi covered his palm. He clenched his teeth and stretched out his hand to grab the long whip. The huge impact was incomparably sharp. This long whip was a treasure at the level of a spiritual weapon. It was very powerful and already had spirituality. Under the incomparably sharp aura, Su-Yi's palm felt a little numb. Yuan Qi gushed out from his body and poured into his palm like a flood, firmly holding the long whip in place. At the same time, Su Yi's eyes darkened as he shouted, "Come here!" Su Yi swung the long whip fiercely. With absolute brute force, he directly held the long whip in place and threw it into the sky. Puff! Everything happened too quickly. Not to mention the experts. Ouyang Mingjie did not expect Su Yi to make a move in such a way. The former actually used his physical body to resist his spiritual weapon treasure. The huge force poured down along the long whip, shaking his arm until it was numb. The web between his thumb and forefinger split open, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. "Young master, be careful." The experts behind Ouyang Mingjie had a drastic change in expression at this moment. Amidst the shock, they immediately pounced on Su Yi, and a vast aura enveloped Su Yi. "Who dares to interfere?" The Green Emperor bellowed. He had long been prepared. Just as those experts were about to move, he was already out in the air. A large patch of resplendent green light shot out from his palm, piercing through the space and blocking those experts from moving forward. Origin Emperor Realm. Feeling the aura on the Green Emperor, the experts were completely shocked. The middle-aged man in front of them was actually a Demon Emperor Realm expert. They had all misjudged him. Roar! The golden unicorn roared, and golden light shone brightly. At this moment, its expression changed greatly. Ignoring the fear in its heart, it rushed towards Su Yi. "You'd better behave." As the faint voice fell, a vast aura directly descended on the golden unicorn, directly crushing it to the point that it could not move. Swish! The golden whip appeared in Su Yi's hand. It had already been seized by Su Yi. The barbarian demonic beast shadow, formed by vitality, was shattered, and Ouyang Mingjie's figure fell directly from the low altitude. No one was able to save him. The remaining experts were all at the Yuanjin realm, and they did not have time to react. Bang! Ouyang Mingjie landed heavily at the foot of the mountain, spitting out blood. Dust flew everywhere, and the ground around him cracked open. It was a tragic sight, and blood flowed out of his mouth. Bang! Su Yi's figure fell straight down, and his foot mercilessly stepped on Ouyang Mingjie's chest. Uff! The pitiful Ouyang Mingjie did not have time to react and was heavily injured again. Blood kept spitting out, and the figure in his eyes enlarged like a malevolent star. At this moment, Ouyang Mingjie could not understand how such a tyrannical young man could be in a completely unknown mountain sect. His strength was at LV8 Origin Spirit Realm. Even in the Sacred Mountain, he was well known and had a certain status. Ouyang Mingjie wanted to make a name for himself before the Sacred Martial Assembly, but he did not expect to be defeated so miserably in front of an unknown kid. You can't even withstand a single blow, and you're still so arrogant. Su Xiaoshui poked his little head out from Su Yi's embrace, looking proud and arrogant. "Remember not to be so arrogant next time." Su Yi stepped on Ouyang Mingjie's chest, and his eyes were sharp. This kid used a killing move right from the start, and Su Yi did not hold back. Although Su Yi did not kill him to avoid causing more trouble, he did not let him off easily. With familiarity, Su Yi found 2 spatial pouches in the man's robes. His origin chi wings soared into the air, and he flew back to the beast mount. Bang, bang, bang. The void exploded, and green light burst out. All kinds of vitality intertwined, and the 5 figures were pushed back. The Green Emperor was fighting against 5 by himself, and he was completely calm. Other than the LV1 Origin Emperor, who was pale, the other 4 Origin Void Realm experts spat out blood. "Forget it," Su Yi said, and did not want to cause more trouble, so he asked the Green Emperor to stop. Bang! The golden unicorn's huge body fell from the sky. It was no match for Merciless West. Chapter 689. It's a pity that I haven't eaten the Golden Light Unicorn's meat yet. Su Yi looked at the Golden Light Unicorn on the ground and felt a little regretful that he hadn't eaten the Golden Light Unicorn's meat yet. I want to eat it too. Hearing this, little handsome Su's interest was piqued. He smacked his lips, and his saliva almost flowed out. "Let's go. These people are not simple." Merciless West said to Su Yi. "Let's go." Su Yi also knew that with Ouyang Mingjia's talent and the group of followers behind him, it would be strange if he didn't have a strong background. A few figures then continued to ride on the barbaric beasts and left. The first level Origin Emperor Realm and the 4 Origin Void Realm experts watched Su Yi and the others leave. They didn't dare to stop them. They knew very well that young Master's kick today was like kicking a steel plate and injuring himself. Most importantly, when they returned, they would probably be in trouble as well. Goo goo. The onlookers in the distance had yet to recover from the shock. They secretly gasped. Originally, everyone thought that those people were going to be in trouble. Who would have thought that the result would be such a reversal? Gale Bloodwolf. That seems to be the mount of the governor of Zhongzhou City. Are those people from the governor's mansion? I think so. However, they have suffered a great loss today. That young man looks ordinary, but his strength is amazing. If he participates in the Sacred Martial Assembly, he will be a dark horse. The 2 people beside that young man are terrifying. One of them is at the Origin Emperor Realm, and the other is at the Demon Emperor Realm. I'm afraid that young man also has a strong background. Bawang's sect. I have never heard of him. Everyone stop guessing. I have heard of Ouyang Mingjia. He is the son of the governor of Zhongzhou City, Ouyang Yuanfeng. He is also a direct disciple of the Sacred Mountain. He has a great reputation in the Sacred Mountain. Everyone was discussing in low voices. They were all stupefied. There were also some young disciples who were shocked. They had come to the Central Continent city to participate in the Sacred Martial Assembly, but before they had even arrived, they had already encountered these 2 youths. One was more valiant than the other. Only now did they realize that the Sacred Martial Assembly was a gathering of geniuses, a place where heroes could move freely. There's always someone better than you. Some young disciples let out a soft sigh. They were full of shock. Since they were able to participate in the Sacred Martial Assembly, they were naturally the most outstanding generation in their respective families and sections. However, at this moment, they realized that there was always someone better than them. Young Master. A group of figures descended and hurried to Ouyangming's side, who was on the ground. At this moment, Ouyangming's aura was dispirited. He was on the verge of death, and his eyes were ashen. He wanted to make a name for himself without fighting, but he did not expect to be humiliated like this. He could not withstand a single blow. He had never been humiliated like this on the Holy Mountain. Pass down my order. You must find that brat. Suddenly, Ouyang Mingjia's eyes surged with resentment and ruthlessness. It wasn't easy for him to get a job from his father, which was to welcome an important person. But now, not to mention messing up everything, even the Sacred Martial Arts Conference might not be fated with him. So, one could imagine the resentment in his heart. Your sect is called the Bawang sect? Shi Wuqing asked Su indifferently as he rode on the flying barbaric demonic beast. When he had agreed to Su Yi's condition, he had not asked much about it. Brother, do you think this name is domineering? Su Yi smiled. It was not that he wanted to deliberately hide it from Merciless West. It was just that the Tian Yao school had a huge relationship, so it was not appropriate for him to reveal it for the time being. As long as you're happy. Merciless West rolled her eyes at Su Yi, then said softly, Ouyangming Jie should have some background. I'm afraid that you will cause some trouble when the time comes for you to seriously injure him. Who cares about his background? In front of you, I won't let anyone bully me. This is the first time. If there's a next time, then I won't be polite. Su Yi replied. His eyes flashed with a fierce light. In front of them was Zhongzhou City, not the Chaos Realm. Even if Ouyangming Jie had some background, there were still rules in Zhongzhou City. From the Barbarian City to the Shunjin Gate, Su Yi had been enduring. But now that he was going to participate in the Sacred Martial Assembly, there was no need for him to endure any longer. If he endured for too long, it would not be good for him. Merciless West looked at Su Yi without saying a word. During this period of time, from the Blood Edge mercenary group to just now, she knew that this kid in front of her was not a kind person. If she provoked him, she would kill him mercilessly. Along the way, they encountered more and more barbarian beasts and people. When they got close to Zhongzhou City, they saw that there were beasts and people everywhere. In front of them, the outline of a huge city appeared. It was endless, as if it could cover the whole world. It was majestic and magnificent, as if it was the territory of a giant beast in the universe. It's so lively. Su Xiaoshui, who was in Su Yi's arms, poked his head out and looked around excitedly. There were all kinds of strange beasts everywhere. Ku! A spirit beast flapped its wings and looked at Su Xiaoshui curiously. However, Su Xiaoshui glared at it, and it immediately trembled. Many people on its back were confused. As they got closer to Zhongzhou City, they saw a huge mountain in front of them. A cliff was cut vertically, and the words Zhongzhou City were engraved on it. All mounts are not allowed to enter the city. You can leave them at the side of the mountain or make your own arrangements. In front of them, there were groups of powerful warriors in armor. They told everyone that mounts were not allowed to enter the city. Everyone could only walk into the city. No one dared to disobey, and they all left their mounts or made their own arrangements. Go back and find your original owner. Su Yi, Merciless West, and Green Emperor jumped off their mounts and let them return. The surrounding terrain was flat, and there were many experts with sharp auras and armor maintaining order. Without permission, no one is allowed to fly in the city. Private fights are forbidden in the city. Violators will be killed without mercy. Shouts mixed with primordial qi reverberated in the ears of many people. So this is Zhongzhou City? Su Yi stared ahead. He had yet to reach Central Continent City, but he could see the gigantic, winding city walls and city gates in the distance. They were bold and vigorous, and a vast and grand aura assaulted his senses. It was as if a gigantic beast was standing there, overlooking all living things. It's so lively. There are many powerful cultivators. It was also the first time Green Emperor came to Zhongzhou City. He was also shocked. He felt that there were many powerful auras hidden in the crowd. Zhongzhou City. This is only the periphery. What we can see now is only the tip of the iceberg. Merciless West raised her eyebrows and said to Su, "There are so many people. I wonder how many people will participate in the Sacred Martial Assembly?" Chapter 690. The Sacred Martial Assembly is a grand event for the entire Central Continent. All the major forces will participate, including the rogue cultivators. Everyone wants to participate in such a grand event. Even if they can't get a good ranking, they can still use it as a form of training. Although the Sacred Martial Assembly has an age limit, the number of participants in the past Sacred Martial Assemblies has always ranged from 3 to 5 million participants. Merciless West informed Su Yi, 3 to 5 million participants. This number caused Su Yi to suck in a breath of cold air. Just the number of the younger generation participating in the Sacred Martial Assembly was 3 to 5 million. This was too frightening. However, Su Yi thought about it carefully. Although the Sacred Martial Assembly had an age limit, the Central Continent was so huge that it was a grand event for the entire Central Continent. It wasn't strange that there were so many participants. However, Su Yi couldn't help but sigh. If they wanted to hold such an enormous event, there would be millions of participants. Just how enormous of a project would this be? The degree of complexity would exceed one's imagination. It would also be a huge test for Central Continent City. Everyone who enters the city, please enter the city in an orderly manner. Those who want to participate in the Sacred Martial Assembly, please come here to check your qualifications and register. The Sacred Martial Assembly will officially begin in 3 days. At that time, the registration will be closed in advance. Without checking and registering personnel, no one can participate in the Sacred Martial Assembly. There was an expert wearing an armor. His aura was vigorous, and his voice was loud enough for the densely packed people outside the city to hear him clearly. Do we have to register and check our qualifications first? Su Yi asked Merciless West. It was his first time participating in the Sacred Martial Assembly, so he didn't know much about it. Of course, you have to register and check your qualifications first. Otherwise, you won't be able to participate. Merciless West nodded and said, "Gee, Suddenly, from the depths of the majestic central continent city in the distance, a ray of light swept across the sky like lightning. A vast and mighty aura immediately enveloped the surrounding space. Under such a shocking aura, everyone present couldn't help but secretly cry out in their hearts. Even the yuan qi in their body was affected. It was an old man who looked to be in his 50s. He rushed out from Central State City and stood in the air. His eyes were like torches as he looked down on the densely packed figures below. His gaze was like sword radiance, incomparably sharp. When they saw the old man who looked to be in his 50s, all the armored experts with sharp auras immediately cupped their fists and bowed. Their eyes were filled with reverence and respect. Everyone, listen up. There are 3 people wanted in Zhongzhou City. One of them is 18 or 19 years old. His name is Balong Sex Yi Su. One of them is a demon emperor, and the other is a primitive emperor. If anyone sees them, inform the guards in the city. They will be heavily rewarded. Those who dare to harbor them will bear the consequences. His voice was mixed with yuan qi and reverberated like thunder. It was deafening. This elder was obviously an expert of the Origin Emperor realm and not an ordinary one. Arrest a primitive emperor and a demon emperor. Isu from the Balong sect. Chapter 691. Yes, I must participate in the sacred martial assembly. I also want to see how strong the younger generation of the Middle Continent is. Su Yi's eyes were resolute. The sacred martial assembly was right in front of him. There was no reason for him not to participate. Su Yi also wanted to know how far he could go compared to the younger generation of the Middle Continent. In Su Yi's heart, no one knew that the people he wanted to compete with the most were the peak younger generation of the Sacred Mountain. Looking at Su Yi's expression, Merciless West's eyes moved. He then said, "You severely injured Ouyang Mingjia. It was originally just a competition between the younger generation. It's not a big deal. The problem is that Ouyang Mingjia's identity is not simple, and he's also a disciple of the Sacred Mountain. I'm afraid that even if you participate in the Sacred Martial Assembly, there will be people who won't let you go. Those big sects look dignified on the surface, but they have a belly full of evil tricks behind their backs. It's inevitable that there will be people who will stab you in the back. If I knew that he was from the Sacred Mountain, I wouldn't have been so gentle." Su Yi's eyes turned cold. If he knew that Ouyang Mingjia was from the Sacred Mountain, he would have been more heavy-handed. "There's a way. If it succeeds, you can participate in the Sacred Martial Assembly openly. Even the Sacred Mountain won't dare to say anything. The matter of you injuring Ouyang Mingjia can also be suppressed. Even if the city lord of the Middle Continent City is unhappy, he won't dare to go overboard on the surface." Merciless West raised his eyes and said to Su Yi seriously, "Brother, what is it? Tell me quickly." Su Yi's interest was immediately piqued. If there was such a way, why didn't this guy say so earlier? "Have you heard of the Yuqian Palace?" Merciless West raised his eyes and asked Su Yi. "Yuqian Palace, no." Su Yi shook his head. "Not many people know about the Yuqian Palace. If you haven't reached that level, you won't even know of its existence." Merciless West looked at Su Yi with a hint of pride in her eyes. Then, she told Su Yi about the origin of the Imperial Palace. The common people knew that the 6 continents, 3 continents, and 1 sea had 1 mountain, 2 religions, 3 sects, and 4 schools. However, among the 1 mountain, 2 religions, 3 sects, and 4 schools, there were some forces that they had to take care of. One of the most important forces was the Heavenly Palace. Command Heaven Palace was a group of weapon refiners, pill refiners, and the most terrifying of all, soul controller masters. Although the 1 mountain, 2 churches, 3 sects, and 4 schools all had pill refiners, weapon refiners, and soul controllers, it didn't affect the existence of the Celestial Palace. As artificers, alchemists, and soul controllers, they were naturally more arrogant than ordinary people. Their statuses were much higher than ordinary martial artists of the same level. Being an artificer, an alchemist, and a soul controller, the Command Heavenly Palace was no small matter. The Command Heavenly Palace had many complicated relationships But overall, they never fought or interfered with any of the matters of the 6 continents, 3 continents, and 1 sea. Add to that the arrogance of artificers, alchemists, and soul controllers. They couldn't be bothered with mundane matters and immerse themselves in cultivation, artificers, and alchemists. Because of this, the 1 mountain, 2 religions, 3 sects, and 4 schools all tacitly acknowledged the existence of the Command Heavenly Palace. After a long time, the Command Heavenly Palace grew larger and larger. The 1 mountain, 2 religions, 3 sects, and 4 schools all had to be wary of it. The Command Heavenly Palace unified the ranks and rules of all artificers, alchemists, and soul controllers. Every pill refiner, alchemist, or soul controller recognized by the Command Heavenly Palace represented an absolute status. They were the real deal and were valued by all the major forces. However, artificers, alchemists, and soul controllers were prideful characters. Although they normally didn't interfere with mundane matters, if someone from the Command Heavenly Palace was bullied, it would be like poking a hornet's nest. Everyone in the 6 continents, 3 continents, and 1 sea knew that the Command Heavenly Palace was extremely protective of their disciples. There was a rumor that an expert from the Everlasting Sect bullied a low-level pill refiner. In the end, the upper echelons of the Command Heavenly Palace came to the Gemini sect to demand justice. For 50 years, the Command Heavenly Palace banned all dealings with the Everlasting Sect. Even their own disciples were on the Command Heavenly Palace's side. One had to know that the Command Heavenly Palace didn't just set the ranks and rules for all pill refiners. It also controlled most of the pill recipes in the 6 continents, 3 continents, and 1 sea. Most importantly, the Command Heavenly Palace was an extremely united force. This caused the Everlasting Sect to suffer quite a bit. In just 10 short years, the Everlasting Sect couldn't take it anymore. In the end, the upper echelons of the Everlasting Sect had no choice but to apologize to the Command Heavenly Palace. You're also a soul controller. If you can pass the Command Heavenly Palace's test and become a member, you'll only have to injure that Ouyang Mingjia. You'll be able to minimize the problem and participate in the Sacred Martial Assembly. No one will be able to stop you, not even the Sacred Mountain. Merciless West told Su Yi seriously. Join the Command Heavenly Palace. Su Yi frowned. It would be a bit difficult for him to join the Command Heavenly Palace. Becoming a member of the Command Heavenly Palace isn't the same as joining it. The Command Heavenly Palace is an organization with absolute freedom. There are many benefits to becoming a member. Many pill refiners, soul controllers, and blacksmiths are members of the Command Heavenly Palace. Xu Wuqing seemed to see Su Yi's dilemma. He rolled his eyes at Su Yi and said, "Moreover, not all alchemists, blacksmiths, and soul controllers can become a member of Heavenly Command Palace. Do you think you can join just because you want to? The test won't be easy. However, once you become a member of Heavenly Command Palace, you will know the various benefits in the future." "Is that so? Then I can join." Su Yi immediately smiled at Merciless West's words. It was a free organization filled with artificers, alchemists, and soul controllers. Su Yi felt that he could join the Heavenly Palace. He could find someone to spar with when the time came. But then Su Yi frowned and said to Merciless West, "But joining the Command Heavenly Palace right now is just a last-minute effort. We don't even know where the Command Heavenly Palace is. The Heavenly Command Palace is much more complicated and huge than you can imagine. In a place like Central State City, there would be a branch palace. Any branch palace can test alchemists, weapon refiners, and soul controllers." Xu Wuqing rolled his eyes at Su Yi. "So, all we need to do now is enter the city, find a branch of Juqin Palace, and pass the test?" Su Yi seemed to understand. "That depends on whether you can pass the test or not." Merciless West said to Su, "I don't believe I can't pass the test." Chapter 692. Su Yi looked up with pride. As a soul tamer, he cultivated the art of taming heaven. He didn't believe that he couldn't pass the test of taming Heaven Palace. Merciless West looked at Su Yi with curiosity and anticipation. He felt that Su Yi's soul power was not simple. He didn't know what this kid's result would be when the test of taming Heaven Palace came. The city walls were grand and huge, and the huge city gates were big enough for giant beasts to pass through. As the Central Continent City issued a warrant to search for Su, Yi, and the other two, there were even more well-trained experts dressed in armor on both sides of the city gates. They constantly scanned the crowd entering the city. Su, Yi, Merciless West, and Green Emperor split up and mixed into the crowd. With the help of their disguises, they easily entered the city. Being in Central Continent City, Su, Yi looked up and felt the vastness of Central Continent City even more. The wide streets, the continuous rise and fall of palaces, intersecting with each other, were majestic and grand. The endless stream of people filled all the streets and alleys. Everywhere was bustling with noise, clamor, and shouts. They converged together and soared into the sky. After entering the city, Su Yi quietly changed his appearance to that of a simple and honest young man. So lively. Little handsome Su stuck out his little head from Su Yi's bosom. "Want to fly out? Be careful and stay here." Su Yi patted little handsome Su's little head. This was Zhongzhou City, where experts were as common as clouds. If someone recognized little handsome Su's identity, it would be troublesome. "Master." Green Emperor hid his aura in the crowd and mixed into the city, finding Su Yi's side. "Be careful. Let's go find a branch of Taming Heaven Palace first." Shi Wuqing also arrived shortly after, and the three of them gathered together again without leaving a trace. Ayo, ayo, ayo. Suddenly, a series of shocking whistling sounds came from the sky like thunder. Waves of terrifying auras swept out and pressed down, causing the people in the city to tremble. Those with insufficient cultivation could not help but feel weak. 3 gigantic shadows were cast in the city. They were incomparably huge, and their auras were terrifying. Su raised his eyes. There were 3 gigantic Jiao dragons, real Jiao dragons. Each of them was incomparably huge. Their bodies were jet black and shone with light. Their scales were eerie, and their eyes were blood red. Their auras were terrifying. Each of them had a cultivation base of the demon void realm. 3 ancient black-scaled demonic dragons. Startled cries came from the crowd. It was actually 3 ancient black-scaled demonic dragons. Su Yi also knew about the ancient black-scaled demonic dragon. It was a demonic race with an extremely high bloodline level. It was rumored that the bloodline of the ancient black-scaled demonic dragon could be traced back to the ancient dragon race. It was rare to see one in the current world. Its strength and talent were incomparably terrifying, and it was one of the overlords of the demonic race. But now, 3 ancient black-scaled demonic dragons soared into the sky, pulling a gigantic warship. There were many figures sitting on it, and their auras were incomparably powerful. Many figures of the younger generation could be vaguely seen, and they were all extraordinary. Roar, roar. At the same time, in the sky on the other side of Zhongzhou City, tiger roars were like thunder. 2 gigantic tigers flew over. Strictly speaking, these were 2 gigantic flying tigers. Their eyes were filled with golden light, as dazzling as the sun. They had a pair of wings on their backs, and when they spread their wings, they were like 2 dark clouds on the ground. Their auras were ferocious and terrifying. These 2 gigantic flying tigers were even more powerful than the 3 ancient black-scaled demonic dragons. Their auras were so overwhelming that the crowd could not help but tremble. 2 golden-eyed flying tigers, oh my God! The crowd exclaimed. The appearance of 3 ancient black-scaled demonic dragons was already shocking enough. Who would have thought that 2 golden-eyed flying tigers would appear in the blink of an eye? Su Yi's eyes flickered, and his heart trembled. The bloodline of the golden-eyed flying tigers was even higher than the ancient black-scaled demonic dragons. What shocked Su even more was that the 2 golden-eyed flying tigers were also mounts. They were pulling a gigantic war chariot as they soared through the air. The clouds were ethereal, and many figures were faintly discernible, exuding powerful auras. The three ancient black-scaled demonic dragons and the two golden-eyed flying tigers were pulling the war chariot and the war chariot respectively. They left, entering the depths of Zhongzhou City. In the center of Zhongzhou City, there was actually a mountain range. There were many palaces and buildings on top of the mountain range. Those are the people from the Heavenly Profound Sect and Beast Emperor Sect. The ancient black-scaled demonic dragons are the mounts of the Heavenly Profound Sect. What a grand formation! The mounts of the Beast Emperor Sect are also the golden-eyed flying tigers. It's said that the younger generation of the Beast Emperor Sect has produced many geniuses this time, and many of them are extremely talented. As the ancient black-scaled demonic dragons and the golden-eyed flying tigers left, the surrounding crowd was still in an uproar. Countless gazes were filled with respect and envy. Didn't they say that all mounts are prohibited in the city? He pursed his lips. Even though the golden-eyed flying tigers and the ancient black-scaled demonic dragons were extraordinary, his current mount was the Beast Emperor Mingxi. After the mysterious space transformed the Green Emperor, he was no longer the same as before. In terms of strength, he was probably much stronger than the golden-eyed flying tigers and the ancient black-scaled demonic dragons. All mounts are prohibited in the city, but the large sects are an exception. The Sacred Martial Assembly is organized by the Holy Mountain with the 5 sects and 3 factions as support. Naturally, they will be given special treatment. Merciless West said indifferently. The 5 sects and 3 factions are really gathering geniuses this time. Sui clenched his fists slightly. The closer he was to the Sacred Martial Assembly, the more his blood boiled for no reason. Compared to all the previous tests, the Sacred Martial Assembly was the real test for him. As for the 5 sects and 3 factions, Sui already knew about them. There was no doubt that the number 1 force in the Central Plains was the Holy Mountain. There were 8 other first-rate forces in the Central Plains. They were the Skyblaze Sect, the Heavenly Profound Sect, the Blue Cloud Sect, the Clear Sky Sect, the Beast Emperor Sect, the Xinjiang Gate, the 3 Yuan Sect, and the Distinct Void Sect. The 5 sects and 3 factions were the first-rate forces in the Central Plains. In addition to these forces, there were also countless second-rate forces close to the Xinjiang Gate. To a certain extent, the Sacred Martial Assembly was also a test for the various sections. The most important thing for a sect to be strong was the infusion of new blood and the rise of its strength. The Sacred Martial Assembly, which was held once every few decades, was a test of the fresh blood of the various forces. From this, one could roughly judge the strength of each force. Therefore, every time the Sacred Martial Assembly was held, all the sects would spare no effort to compete. The streets were bustling with noise and excitement. At this moment, Sui felt as if he had entered the Grandview Garden. He was quite interested in everything. The prosperity of the Central Plains city was beyond his imagination. Su Xiaoshui poked his head out of Sui's embrace from time to time. His small eyes looked around. He was much more curious about everything than Sui. Don't be like a country bumpkin. You have to go to the Heavenly Command Palace as soon as possible. Merciless West's voice sounded in Sui's ears. This was a sound transmission technique. Chapter 693. The Central Continent City is so big, but I don't know where the branch of the Heavenly Palace is. Why don't we find someone to ask? Sui felt that they had already walked for half an hour in the huge Central Continent City, but they were still only at the outskirts of the city. The size of the Central Continent City was beyond imagination. Even if they used their yuan qi, they might not be able to cross it in a day. Do you think that just anyone on the street knows about the Heavenly Palace? Not many people know about the branch of the Heavenly Palace. Those who know about the Heavenly Palace are definitely not ordinary people. Merciless West rolled her eyes at Sui. Then what should we do? Sui muttered. Follow me, don't look around. I know about the branch of the Heavenly Palace in the Central Continent City. Merciless West slightly raised her eyebrows. As her voice fell, her figure immediately shuttled through the crowd. At this moment, Merciless West's seemingly normal pace was extremely strange. If one looked carefully, they would find that she was like a loach in the crowd. Why didn't you say so earlier? He rolled his eyes. He could only follow behind her with the 100 transformation steps. Look at the original you, chapter, section O. The central continent city was packed with people from all walks of life. Clamor, hawking, discussions, all kinds of sounds gathered together and soared into the sky. With his sharp soul power, Su-Yi could tell from the discussions around him that it was the first time that many people came to the central continent city. They were all shocked. Of course, most of the discussions revolved around the sacred martial assembly this time. On the wide street, it was already quite crowded. There were armored patrols on the street from time to time. Occasionally, there would be a fierce wind blood wolf whistling through the air. On top of it sat armored patrols, but their aura was even sharper. Merciless West led the way in front, avoiding the patrols without leaving any traces. Su-Yi and the Green Emperor followed closely behind Merciless West. Instead, it was the dazzling array of shops on the streets of the city that opened Su-Yi's eyes. There were all kinds of dazzling goods on display. For example, Su-Yi actually saw people selling savage beasts as mounts. This was something rarely seen in other places. Less than an hour later, there were fewer and fewer people on the street. Compared to the previous bustle, there was a sense of seclusion, but it was still extremely lively. After passing through a few more streets, Shi Wuqing's footsteps slowed down. At this moment, Su-Yi's eyes were filled with astonishment. Under his sharp spiritual strength, he discovered that many people in the surroundings had unusual spiritual auras fluctuating from their bodies. More importantly, Su-Yi did not notice it when there were many people. However, now that there were much fewer people on the street, Su-Yi finally noticed that many people had similar badges on their shoulders. The colors of these badges were different, and their shapes were slightly different as well. However, in the center of the badges, there were lifelike lightning patterns, as if they were really flashing with lightning. Looking carefully, the lightning seemed to be able to release light. "It's here!" Merciless West stopped and looked at the palace buildings in front of her as she spoke to Su-Yi. Su-Yi stopped and followed Merciless West's gaze. In front of him was a majestic palace building. The area was not large, but it was not small either. It emitted a simple and unadorned aura. In the central continent city, it seemed low-key and simple. In the middle of the palace building, there was a tall tower that rose from the ground. It had a total of 7 floors and was entirely green, emitting a faint light. Among the buildings in the central continent city, the 7th-floor tower could not be considered the tallest. However, for some reason, it gave off a kind of oppressive feeling. The more carefully one looked at it, the more one's soul would tremble. At the entrance, there was a huge stone engraved with the words Heavenly Palace. Behind it were the words Central Continent City Branch Palace, emitting a faint light. "Is this the Heavenly Palace Branch Palace?" Su-Yi sized it up. In the Central Continent City, although this place was not particularly bad, it was definitely not eye-catching. It seemed that it was just as Merciless West had said. The Heavenly Palace was an organization that only focused on cultivation, refining weapons, and refining pills. From the facade of this branch palace, although it was thick and old, as if it had experienced the baptism of time, one could still feel an aura that stood aloof from worldly affairs. At the entrance, there were many people lining up. From the lineup, it seemed that they were the elders of some families and sects, accompanying some younger generation disciples. On those young faces, there was some anticipation and nervousness. The sacred martial assembly is just around the corner. There will be many alchemists, blacksmiths, and soul controllers coming to the Heavenly Palace to take the test. Merciless West's gaze swept over the entrance as she spoke in a faint voice. "Are these all alchemists, blacksmiths, and soul controllers?" Su-Yi looked at the young men and women lining up. At the moment, there were at least 100 people, all of them with extraordinary auras. They were all alchemists, blacksmiths, or soul controllers. One had to know that when Su-Yi was in the Xinjiang Gate, although there were alchemists, blacksmiths, and soul controllers among his peers, he rarely encountered them. Therefore, this was the first time Su-Yi had seen so many alchemists, blacksmiths, and soul controllers. He could not help but sigh in his heart. Alchemists, blacksmiths, they were distinguished guests wherever they went. They would be valued in any sect. At this moment, there were so many alchemists, blacksmiths, and possibly even soul controllers. But at this moment, there was a long queue at the entrance of this inconspicuous heavenly palace. Using his soul power, it was not difficult for Sue-yi to discover that many of the experts accompanying the younger generation here were probably terrifyingly strong. It was not hard to imagine that these people were all famous magnates in the outside world. But at this moment, they were all obediently waiting outside this branch of Heavenly Palace. The Central Province is so big. Many sects and clans are taking advantage of this sacred martial assembly to bring their younger generation here to be tested, to see if they can gain the recognition of Heavenly Palace. Merciless West could see what Sue-yi was thinking. Among this group of young soul controllers, alchemists, and blacksmiths, there would not be many who could pass the test. She spoke faintly. However, not everyone can pass the test. Those who can gain the recognition of Heavenly Palace are the best in their respective fields. After saying that, Shi Wuqing's eyes flickered with light. He was filled with vigor, and his aura soared. Generally speaking, there were two types of refiners in this world: pill refiners and soul controllers. Both were genuine existences, but one was tested by the Celestial Palace while the other was tested by the Celestial Palace. Chapter 694. It was a spiritual bird whose entire body was inlaid with green and white. Its posture was graceful, and its curves were alluring. However, the aura that permeated from its body caused the expressions of the people below to change. Some of the experts were also moved by it. Ancient spiritual cloud crane. Sue-yi raised his eyes. The huge spiritual bird was an ancient spiritual cloud crane. Its level was not below the ancient black-scaled demonic dragon or the golden-eyed flying tiger. Sue-yi thought to himself, could it be that people from some big sect had come to Central Continent City? While Sue-yi was pondering, the ancient spiritual cloud crane hovered at a low altitude. 5 figures descended from it. The one in the middle was an old woman in her 60s. She wore a plain dress, and her face was calm. However, the faint light in the old woman's eyes and the invisible aura that spread out from her body caused many people's gazes to change. There were many hidden auras that fluctuated. The remaining 4 people were quite young. There were 2 men and 2 women. Of the 2 young men, one was 17 or 18 years old, and the other was 14 or 15 years old. However, they both had an imposing appearance. One of the 2 women was only 14 or 15 years old. Her face was still young, and her body was full of youthfulness. Her eyes were sharp. The other woman had already caused all the young men to be unable to shift their gazes away. The woman was not old either. She was about 18 or 19 years old. Her eyes were like deep pools, and her soft black hair reached her ears. She wore a plain white dress that was not stained with dust. Her figure was graceful. Just by standing there quietly, her aura was already outstanding. She was like a fairy that was untainted by dust. The woman was too beautiful. Her eyebrows were slender and picturesque. Her eyes were twinkling like stars. Under the exquisite bridge of her nose, her lips were like cherry blossoms. Her face was delicate and beautiful. It was unforgettable. Sue-yi could be considered to have seen many beautiful women, not to mention Ling Qianxue's charm in her human form. Lu Ruoxi's beauty was indeed devastatingly beautiful. There was also Mou, whom he met in the barbaric demon forest. Mu Yao, Gong Qi, Sakura Asaka, and others from the Xinjiang Gate. Any one of them was enough to suppress the crowd. However, the woman in front of him had a kind of fresh and refined beauty. Sue-yi couldn't help but take a few more glances at her. Roar! With a shocking roar, a huge black shadow spiraled over from afar. Its aura was terrifying. It was an incomparably huge flood dragon whose entire body was jet black and shining. Its scales were dense, and its eyes were as red as blood. Ancient black-scaled demonic dragon. Sue-yi's expression changed. This was one of the 3 ancient black-scaled demonic dragons that he had seen not long ago. Unexpectedly, it had appeared here alone. Whoosh whoosh, as the ancient black-scaled demonic dragon settled down, 6 figures descended from it. 5 of them were young men and women, and one of them was an old man with a ruddy complexion. There were 4 men and 1 woman. Their ages ranged from 14 to 20 years old. Each of them had an outstanding temperament. With a single glance, one could tell that they were not ordinary people. Their eyes were filled with arrogance. /original plus VG song, ZK, hair in particular, one of the young men attracted Su Yi's attention. The young man landed on the ground with his hands behind his back. His long black hair was like a pool of water as it fell on his shoulders. His dark purple robe outlined his slender and straight body. His body was simple to the point that there were no decorations on it. However, it set off the deep facial features on his face, making him very attractive. Such a young man, let alone a woman, even a man would take a few more glances at him. Su Yi noticed this young man. It wasn't because of his appearance, but because he felt an invisible fluctuation. This fluctuation only flashed in Su Yi's heart for a moment before it disappeared. However, Su Yi noticed this young man. This person was most likely not ordinary. I didn't expect Blue Cloud Sect's Elder Su Yun to also be here. What a coincidence. The ruddy-faced old man in the lead glanced at the several people who had alighted from the ancient spiritual cloud crane. His gaze swept across the few young male and female disciples as a smile hung on his face. His long eyebrows were slightly raised, causing his smile to have an additional meaning. The Heavenly Mystery Sect also came so early this time. What a coincidence, Elder Jian. The old woman was Elder Su Yun of the Blue Cloud Sect. She smiled lightly at the old man. Her gaze swept across the few young disciples behind the old man and said, "The Heavenly Mystery Sect is indeed full of talents. Perhaps after this assessment, there will be another disciple who will become famous in the Central Continent." Hearing Elder Su Yun's words, Jian Wanyan's face couldn't help but twitch secretly. Although he didn't bring people to the Central Continent city during the last Sacred Martial Assembly, he still heard some things. During the last Sacred Martial Assembly, an extraordinary soul controller from the Heavenly Mystery Sect was tested to have outstanding talent. It was enough to compare with the most outstanding soul controller in the Sacred Mountain. He originally thought that his name would shake the Central Continent. Who knew that at this time, an even more talented junior would emerge from the Blue Cloud Sect? His limelight was unparalleled, and the Heavenly Mystery Sect suffered a loss. It seems that the Blue Cloud Sect has produced a lot of good seedlings this time. I also look forward to the Blue Cloud Sect's emergence in large numbers this time. Jian Wanyan said in a faint voice. Although he didn't show it on the surface, those who paid attention could feel that this was already a secret competition. During the last Sacred Martial Assembly, the Heavenly Mystery Sect's juniors were suppressed in the Yuqian Palace's assessment. This made the Heavenly Mystery Sect want to regain their face in this assessment. Even when the Blue Cloud Sect's people arrived at the Yuqian Palace's branch, the Heavenly Mystery Sect's people followed closely behind. This made people suspect that the Heavenly Mystery Sect's people deliberately followed the Blue Cloud Sect's people. I hope so. Let's encourage each other. Elder Su Yun smiled faintly. Her expression didn't reveal a trace, and she was still as calm as ever. Then, she slightly raised her eyes to the sky and said, "Is there anyone else coming? It seems that everyone is early this time." Roar. The bestial roar was like thunder, and the sound waves were like rolling waves. When the roar fell into the ears of the crowd, it was like a deafening roar. Su Yi was originally listening at the side. The Heavenly Mystery Sect and the Blue Cloud Sect, like the Xinjiang Gate, were first-class forces among the 5 sects and 3 factions in the Central Province. It was no wonder that these people were so ostentatious. Standing at the entrance of a Yuqian Palace, they didn't pay much attention to the people lining up around them, as if they were familiar with them. The bestial roar in the sky made Su Yi come back to his senses, and he once again raised his eyes to look. Another gigantic beast flew through the air. It was a gigantic wolf with a pair of wings on its back. Its entire body was as white as crystal, and its pair of ferocious eyes were incomparably blood-red, like two miniature blood moons flashing, emitting a terrifying demonic aura. Blood-eyed demonic wind wolf. When he saw this blood-eyed demonic wind wolf, Sui couldn't help but frown slightly. The blood-eyed demonic wind wolf that Yun Lingfeng's Yuan Qi transformed into was a blood-eyed demonic wind wolf. However, the one in front of him was no longer formed by Yuan Qi, but a genuine blood-eyed demonic wind wolf of the demonic illusory stage. Whoosh whoosh. Chapter 695. Sui frowned when he saw the figures. Of the 5 figures, 4 were young disciples, 3 were male, and 1 was female. Their ages ranged from 14 to 15 to 20 years old. One of the young men was slightly older and looked to be around 23 or 24. The 4 young men and women had identical badges. Sui also had one. It was the Xinjiang Gates badge. Sui was also familiar with a young man in a brocade robe. This young man was called Si Xiuyuan. He was an alchemist and wasn't weak. However, he didn't participate in the final battle at the Xinjiang Gate because he didn't have enough sword pattern stones. However, he entered the Divine Sword Valley in the end. As for the leading old man, a trace of coldness flashed past Sui's eyes. This was none other than Elder by Mingshan. This group of people was obviously from the Xinjiang Gate. Shi Wuqing noticed the sudden change in Sui's expression but didn't reveal anything. I didn't expect to meet Elder Jian and Elder Suyun. Bai Mingshan looked at Jian Wanyin of the Heavenly Xian sect and Elder Suyun of the Blue Cloud sect. He seemed a little surprised and didn't seem too happy to bump into the Heavenly Xian sect and the Blue Cloud sect. Elder Bai of the Xinjiang Gate, I heard that your direct disciple is called Yin Lingfeng. He has received great benefits from the Xinjiang Gate. He is the inherited divine weapon of the Xinjiang Gate's ancestors. Congratulations on having such a disciple. When Jian Wanyin saw Bai Mingshan, he immediately greeted him. However, the smile on his face was fake. I wonder where Elder Jian heard this from. You're quite well informed. Bai Mingshan was secretly surprised, but when his disciple Yun Lingfeng was mentioned, his expression became much more relaxed. I heard that Elder Bai's disciple is also a soul controller. May I know who it is? Jian Wanyin seemed to be very interested as he sized up Si Xiuyuan and the other 3. That disciple of mine did not come to Central Continent City this time. Hearing Jian Wanyin's words, Elder Bai Mingshan was a little displeased. If it weren't for the chaos in Suruga, his disciple wouldn't have been punished. In this sacred martial assembly, relying on the supreme benefits Yun Lingfeng had obtained and the trump cards he possessed, it was enough to make his name known to the whole world. It was the best opportunity for him to make a name for himself and shake the Central State. Now that he had lost this opportunity, the next sacred martial assembly would be 30 years later. At that time, he would also lose the qualifications to participate. Is that so? Hearing this, Jian Wanyin felt a little regretful. It's getting late. Let's go get tested first, Elder Suyun said with a faint smile. Then, she led the 4 young disciples of the Blue Cloud sect up the stairs. They didn't need to line up. After showing something at the entrance, they were directly welcomed. Seeing this, Jian Wanyin immediately followed. Bai Mingshan hesitated for a moment. His expression was a little unnatural, as if he didn't really want to go with the Heavenly Xian sect and the Blue Cloud sect. However, he had no choice but to go with them. Others might not know, but Bai Mingshan was the clearest. This time, Bai Mingshan brought a young soul controller, 2 young alchemists, and a weapon refiner. Although these disciples were young, they were extraordinary in the Xinjiang Gate. They were also very talented. However, from the way Bai Mingshan secretly sized up the young disciples of the Blue Cloud sect and the Heavenly Xian sect, it seemed that the young people brought by the Heavenly Xian sect and the Blue Cloud sect this time had greater potential. In the sacred martial assembly that was held once every 30 years, The main battlefield for the major forces was naturally the sacred martial assembly. However, after so many years, the Imperial Palace's test had become a smoke-free battlefield for the major forces. After all, there was no need to doubt the importance of alchemists, weapon refiners, and soul controllers to the major forces. On the eve of the sacred martial assembly, taking the opportunity to bring some young alchemists and weapon refiners of suitable age to the Imperial Palace for the test had slowly become a rule for the major forces. It was another drill ground for the sacred martial assembly. To a certain extent, those who could surpass all the heroes in the Drive Heavenly Palace's test could also be said to represent their ranking in the Sacred Martial Conference. If this test was to say that alchemists and weapon refiners could represent the final ranking of the Sacred Martial Assembly, it might be a little far-fetched. After all, although alchemists and weapon refiners had a high status and were highly valued by the major forces, that was because of the importance of alchemists and weapon refiners. For example, a level 4 alchemist and weapon refiner was enough to have a large number of Origin Emperor experts by their side. Not many people would be willing to offend an alchemist or weapon refiner. After all, no one could guarantee that they wouldn't have the opportunity to beg an alchemist or weapon refiner in the future, especially when facing an alchemist who wouldn't be careless and get injured. At this time, an alchemist was especially important. Moreover, the appeal of an alchemist and weapon refiner was extremely great, and there would be many followers by their side. How many people owed a favor to an alchemist or weapon refiner? There might even be experts who owed a favor to them. Offending an alchemist or weapon refiner was equivalent to poking a hornet's nest. Of course, whether it was an alchemist or weapon refiner, in terms of appeal, they were especially important to a mountain sect. Everyone knew that although alchemists and weapon refiners were important, in terms of combat strength, they had some flaws. The latest are Chapter 10 Section % above W5 Alchemy, Weapon Refiner, Martial Tao. Any path was extremely difficult. The higher one went, the more difficult it was to reach the sky. If an alchemist or weapon refiner wanted to have an achievement in alchemy or weapon refiner, they would need to put in a lot of effort and experience. Unless they were the kind of talented and abnormal people. Otherwise, it would be necessary to delay the martial Tao. Therefore, compared to ordinary martial Tao breakthroughs, alchemists and weapon refiners were undoubtedly more difficult. Of course, this didn't exclude those abnormal alchemists or weapon refiners who could do both. However, such terrifying people were definitely special cases. And among them, one had to mention Soul Controller. If a stunning alchemist or weapon refiner was detected, it could only be said to be the fortune of a mountain sect. It wasn't enough to say that it represented the final result of this sacred martial assembly. In that case, if an astonishing soul controller was detected, it would very likely represent the final ranking of this sacred martial assembly. Alchemists and weapon refiners were already extremely rare, and soul controller was even rarer. The basic requirement to become a soul controller was already enough to make countless people sigh. Chapter 696. Therefore, Bai Mingshan had mixed feelings. Although Shunjian Gate brought a soul controller this time, he was too young. There must be soul controllers in the Blue Cloud sect and the Heavenly Xian sect. The test of the Imperial Palace was also a smokeless battlefield for the various sections. Once they were tested together, Shunjian Gate would fall too far behind, which would be a loss of face. However, if his disciple Yun Lingfeng could come this time, then he wouldn't have to worry at all. Unfortunately, because of Su Yi's death, Yun Lingfeng couldn't participate in this sacred martial assembly. He lost a great opportunity to become famous in one battle. This made Bai Mingshan very angry, and he didn't know what those people in the sect were thinking. Although he was very unwilling to go with them, Bai Mingshan couldn't back down. If he turned around and left, he would be in an even more difficult situation. He could only bite the bullet and go with them. This time, he brought a few young alchemists, blacksmiths, and that young soul controller. They were all very talented, and it wouldn't be bad if the results were amazing. After all, the results of the Imperial Palace's test for soul controllers weren't the true results of the sacred martial assembly. Outside the branch of the imperial palace, Jian Wanyin and Bai Mingshan each took out an item, and they were led in without any resistance. The ancient black-scaled demonic dragon, ancient spirit cloud crane, and blood-eyed demonic wind wolf also left. Huff! Huff! Seeing the group of experts and the three huge demonic beasts leave, the people lining up outside the branch of the imperial palace calmed down a little. Some people kept taking deep breaths. The invisible pressure just now made those who weren't strong enough tremble, and their legs went soft. Isn't the imperial palace the fairest? We've waited for so long, and it's still not our turn. Why don't they have to line up? Some young and energetic disciples whispered. Seeing the disciples of the large sects being led in, they couldn't help but feel a little unconvinced. Shoo, lower your voice. The imperial palace is fair, but there are some things that you don't understand with your strength. When you become strong one day, you will naturally understand. An elder who was escorting them warned these young and impetuous disciples not to speak nonsense. Seeing Bai Mingshan and the others enter, he squinted his eyes. He did not expect to meet people from Shunjin Gate here. Si Shuyuan had arrived in Central Continent City. He reckoned that Situ Muyang, Muyao, Ryugan River, Gongqi, and the others should have arrived as well. What's wrong? Aren't you going to greet someone you know? Merciless West whispered to Su Yi through telepathy. She looked at Su Yi's reaction intentionally or unintentionally. She remembered that Su Yi had once told her that he had stayed at the Shunjin Gate for a period of time. It seemed to be a long story. Forget it. Su Yi smiled faintly. There was a trace of bitterness at the corner of his mouth. Merciless West saw all of this, but her expression did not reveal anything. She continued to whisper to Su Yi through telepathy. It seems that being at Shunjin Gate is indeed a long story. Let's go. I want to see how extraordinary those disciples from Shunjin Gate are. They actually didn't let you stay at Shunjin Gate. Old brother, we have to queue up even if we want to enter. Su Yi raised his eyebrows and whispered. Although telepathy was not difficult and was even very common, Su Yi was not familiar with it. However, Su Yi was clear that large sects like Shunjin Gate, Heavenly Mystery Sect, and Blue Cloud Sect could bring their disciples in for the examination without any obstruction. However, they were different. They had to queue up. You don't call me old brother for nothing. Come with me. Merciless West smiled and whispered into Su Yi's ears. She then stepped forward and gestured for Su Yi to follow. Su Yi was confused, but he followed behind Merciless West. He pressed little handsome Su against his chest, telling him to behave. There are many people here, and this was a branch of the Heavenly Palace. There were alchemists, blacksmiths, and even soul controllers everywhere. They were all people with sharp eyes. Su Yi was afraid that someone would recognize this little guy. Green Emperor's expression was solemn as he followed closely behind Su. Are you guys going to cut the line? Seeing that Merciless West, Su Yi, and Green Emperor had also stepped forward, someone finally couldn't hold it in any longer and scolded Merciless West with an ugly expression. When large sects like Heavenly Mystery Sect, Shunjin Gate, and Blue Cloud Sect cut the line, they didn't dare to say anything. However, these unfamiliar figures were different. They had been waiting in line for so long. How could they allow anyone to cut the line? Whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, a large group of eyes stared straight at Merciless West, Su Yi, and Green Emperor. Their gazes were not particularly kind. So what? The Green Emperor said in a deep voice. A faintly discernible aura spread out from him. His green robes fluttered in the wind, and a resplendent green light flashed in his eyes as he glared at the surrounding gazes. What a terrifying aura! A Demon Emperor realm expert from the Demon Clan. Under the suppression of the formless aura, the expressions of the crowd changed one after another. Many obscure auras fluctuated. The older experts from the various sects and clans were shocked. The person who looked like a follower was actually a Demon Emperor expert. It was enough to show the identity of the two people in front. The group of young people had lost their arrogance in front of the young disciples of Heavenly Mystery Sect, Shunjin Gate, and Blue Cloud Sect. They originally wanted to regain some face from this ordinary-looking young man, but at this moment, their legs went weak and their bodies trembled. How could a young man with such an expert beside him be ordinary? 3% asterisk. Stop. This is not a place to barge in. Line up. At the entrance of the Yuqian Palace, a young man in his late 20s and a burly man in his 40s walked out and shouted. The two of them were wearing crimson long robes. Their hair was combed high, and there was a lightning symbol badge on their chests. Although their auras were not very strong, they possessed a proud aura. Their expressions were at ease in the face of the many experts who were currently queuing outside. The two of them felt the aura of the Green Emperor. They looked at the Green Emperor and frowned slightly. But it was only a slight frown. It was obvious that they were displeased. Merciless West did not speak. She glanced at the burly man and the young man. Then, a lightning emblem appeared in her hand, and she stuck it on her chest. The emblem was almost exactly the same as the one on the burly man and the one on the young man's chest. However, the emblem on the burly man's body was triangular. It flashed with silver-white light, and the lightning in the emblem looked real. Looking at it carefully, there were 4 lightning arcs flashing, which made people's hearts palpitate. Chapter 697. However, the color of West Wuqing's badge was a kind of brilliant gold and silver. The two colors were shining, showing 4 corners. There were 6 flashing electric arcs in the badge, and even a trace of the 7th one had appeared. It was just that the light was dim. When the badge was taken out, the arrogance on the faces of the middle-aged man and the young man immediately turned into surprise. Their eyes were filled with shock and awe, and they actually bowed respectfully to Merciless West. I brought someone to take the test. Looking at the middle-aged man and the young man, Merciless West emitted an aura for no reason. Sir, please follow me. The middle-aged man's attitude was especially respectful and courteous. He personally led the way and signaled for Merciless West to follow. Okay. Merciless West nodded and waved at Su-Yi. A smug look hung in the corner of his eyes, and he immediately walked away with his hands behind his back. Su-Yi and the Green Emperor were dumbfounded. They looked at each other in dismay. They never thought that Merciless West would have such influence in the dignified Heavenly Palace. This influence was no less than that of the Xinjiang Gate, the Heavenly Mystery Sect, or the Blue Cloud Sect. In fact, it might even surpass them. Su-Yi was stunned for a moment before he came back to his senses. He immediately followed Shi Wuqing. There were many questions in his heart, but he could only ask Shi Wuqing later. The Heavenly Palace branch was a huge palace-shaped building. When one walked inside, one would discover that it was a completely different world. The interior was actually a huge circular hall. Dozens of huge, bright stone pillars were distributed in the hall, supporting the huge hall. On the stone pillars, there were lifelike carvings. Some were refining weapons, some were refining weapons, some were forging weapons, and some were soul controllers summoning remnant souls. The interior of the large hall was majestic and magnificent. It had a dignified appearance and was solemn and dignified. There were connected windows all around the circular walls, allowing light to pour in. The entire hall didn't seem gloomy at all. Instead, it was filled with all sorts of ingenious designs that made people gasp in amazement. Su-Yi looked around curiously. He couldn't help but sigh at the imagination of this building. Walking in the hall gave one a feeling of endless reverie from the past to the future. At the same time, Su-Yi's sharp soul power sensed a special aura in the entire Heavenly Palace. This aura was everywhere, a very mysterious place. I'm afraid it's not simple. Su-Yi guessed. A place like this definitely wasn't simple. Once a powerful enemy invaded, it would definitely cause a terrifying commotion. Don't go snooping around, boy. This is a branch of Heaven Master Palace, so snooping around is a big taboo. However, I can give you introduction. This is a branch of Heaven Master Palace, but it's not small. Other than the inspection area, there's also the pill refiners area, the equipment refiners area, and the necromancer's area. There's also the pill refiners area, the equipment refiners area, and the necromancer's area. There's also the pill refiners area, the equipment refiners area, the necromancer's area, and the necromancer's area. If you're a member of Heaven Master Palace and have a badge of Heaven Master Palace, you'll be able to access all of that information. There's also the trading area, where equipment refiners, pill refiners, and necromancers can trade together. Merciless West's voice fell into Su Yi's ears. When Su Yi heard this, his heart pounded. This heavenly palace really wasn't simple, and this was only a branch of the heavenly palace. If this was the entire heavenly palace, just how powerful would it be to be able to operate such a huge heavenly palace? Just how terrifying would the person behind it be? The path gradually became narrower and narrower, and they encountered quite a few people who were clearly pill refiners, tool refiners, and soul controllers. These people all had the same badge on their chests or shoulders. The only difference was the color and shape. Su Yi looked carefully. Two old men walked over. Their badges were also in the shape of four corners. Some were silver while others were bronze. However, there were only 4 arcs of lightning in each badge. When they saw the badge on Merciless West's chest, their eyes were filled with shock and astonishment. "Sir, please follow me. We have arrived at a specially arranged VIP examination area. It will also be personally presided over by the 3 Vice Palace Masters of the Central Continent City Branch Palace. However, the people from the Divine Sword Sect, Heavenly Profound Sect, and Blue Cloud Sect have just arrived. I'm afraid that they will have to wait for a while." The middle-aged man turned around and said to Shi Wuqing, "No problem. Thank you for your trouble." Merciless West nodded in thanks. After passing through 2 wide corridors, Su Yi, the Green Emperor, and Merciless West finally arrived at the testing area under the middle-aged man's guidance. It was a spacious, circular hall. It was so spacious and quiet that not a single sound could be heard. At this moment, there were a total of 20 figures in the room. Su Yi glanced at them and immediately recognized them. They were Bai Mingshan and Si Shiyuan from the Xinjian Gate, Elder Su Yun from the Blue Cloud Sect, and Elder Jian Wanyan from the Profound Sky Sect. As Su Yi, Merciless West, and Green Emperor arrived, the people from the 3 major forces all looked at Su Yi and the others. Originally, the people from the 3 major forces thought that the newcomers would be from the other major forces. After all, they had cut the queue and came here with their status. The others were not qualified to come in with them. However, when they saw that it was Su Yi and the others, they seemed to have seen them outside the heavenly palace. Bai Mingshan, Jian Wanyan, and the others were immediately surprised. Many of the younger generation from the 3 major forces were also curious. Their eyes immediately fell on Su Yi, who seemed to be around the same age. Bai Mingshan and Jian Wanyan seemed to have sensed the invisible aura from Merciless West and Green Emperor. However, they were only slightly moved. Is the heavenly palace becoming more and more unruly? Do they want us to be tested with everyone else? Bai Mingshan said in a faint voice. It sounded a little strange. That's right. The rules of the heavenly palace seemed to be getting more and more unruly. Jian Wanyan's voice was faint. Although it was not loud, it was a little harsh. Elder Su Yun from the Blue Cloud Sect curiously looked at Merciless West, Su Yi, and Green Emperor. However, she did not say much and her expression did not change. Hearing Bai Mingshan and Jian Wanyan's harsh words, Merciless West glanced at them indifferently and had no intention of responding. However, Su Yi did not look too happy. Bai Mingshan and the Heavenly Profound Sect were really taking advantage of their power to bully others. They were so overbearing even in the Heavenly Palace. The middle-aged man's face darkened and he was about to speak. Suddenly, a voice rang out. The rules of the Heavenly Palace are not for anyone to say anything. The Heavenly Palace naturally has its own rules. The voice was calm and sounded a little old. Chapter 698. Su Yi looked in the direction of the voice and saw 3 figures walking out from the side of the hall. The person in the lead was old, and his back seemed to be staggering. However, his body was round, and he wasn't very tall. His figure looked like a ball. Looking at this old man, Su Yi could not help but think of Fatty Wong. This was definitely an older version of Fatty Wong. The other two were also old men. One was dressed in a dark red robe, while the other was dressed in a gray robe. They looked younger than the first old man. However, when he felt the invisible aura of the three old men, Su Yi's expression suddenly became solemn. The aura of the three men was looming, causing the pneuma in his body to be blocked and his soul to tremble. So strong. In particular, Su Yi was secretly amazed by the first old man. This old man was absolutely tyrannical. His degree of tyrannical might even be above Shi Wuqing's. On the chest of the first elder's plain robe, there was a badge that was almost identical to the first elder's. It also had 4 corners and flashed with a pure golden color, which was especially dazzling. This degree of dazzling was much more dazzling than Merciless West's badge. However, there were only 6 electric arcs in the badge. The 6th arc was even faintly discernible and was very dim. The badge of the red-robed old man also had 4 corners. It was silver-white, and there were 5 electric arcs in the badge, which were quite dazzling. The badge of the gray-robed old man was bronze in color and had 4 corners. There were also 5 electric arcs in the badge, which were dazzling. Greetings to the 3 deputy palace masters. When the 3 old men walked out, the middle-aged man who led Su Yi, Merciless West, and Green Emperor immediately bowed respectfully. Guanlan, Yinlu, and Yunding Palace Masters, I trust you have been well since we last met. Seeing the 3 old men, Elder Su Yun of the Blue Cloud sect immediately smiled and nodded respectfully. Greetings to Guanlan, Yinlu, and Yunding Palace Masters. Bai Mingshan immediately bowed with an awkward expression. Greetings to Guanlan, Yinlu, and Yunding Palace Masters. Jian Wanyan also looked a little embarrassed. In front of the 3 old men, he lowered his head slightly and lost all his arrogance. The young disciples of the Blue Cloud sect, the Heavenly Xian sect, and the Shenzhen Gate also bowed respectfully to the 3 old men. These were the 3 deputy palace masters of the Yuqian Palace. They had come here to pass the test of the Yuqian Palace, so they were in awe and yearning for it. Greetings to the 3 elders who have come from afar. We are only vice palace lords. Among the 3 old men, the first one who staggered slightly spoke. His voice was a little old and deep. He nodded at Elder Su Yun, but did not pay much attention to Bai Mingshan and Jian Wanyan. It was obvious that he was the one who had spoken just now. The other 2 old men also nodded slightly at Elder Su Yun. As for Jian Wanyan and Bai Mingshan, they were immediately displeased. It seemed that the 3 deputy palace masters had heard what Bai Mingshan and Jian Wanyan had said just now. As soon as he finished speaking, the slightly staggered old man's gaze fell on Merciless West, Su Yi, and Green Emperor. He glanced at the Green Emperor a little more, and then the 3 old men fixed their eyes on Merciless West. The gazes of the 3 old men swept across the badge on Shi Wuqing's chest. Immediately, their expressions changed, and their expressions changed. I am Guanlan, the deputy palace master of the Yutian Palace in the Central Province. This is Yin Lu and Yun Ding, the deputy palace masters of the Yutian Palace in the Central Province City. How should I address you? The slightly staggered old man immediately took a few steps forward and stopped in front of Merciless West. His expression was extremely courteous, and his expression was much more relaxed than when he had faced Bai Mingshan and Jian Wanyan. _V nu y nu e unspecified currency, the fastest z. Square root. The other 2 old men also took a few steps forward and nodded at Merciless West with a smile. Their attitude towards Bai Mingshan and Jian Wanyan was completely different. The 3 old men were the deputy palace masters of the Yuqian Palace. They could directly show their displeasure to the elders of the Shenzhen Gate and the Heavenly Xian sect. Bai Mingshan and Jian Wanyan did not dare to show any displeasure, but now they were extremely courteous to Merciless West, which surprised everyone present, especially Bai Mingshan and Jian Wanyan. They were all secretly shocked and puzzled. They looked at Merciless West again. Then, Bai Mingshan and Jian Wanyan's gazes finally landed on the badge on Merciless West's chest. When they saw the badge, Bai Mingshan and Jian Wanyan were even more shocked. Greetings, Palace Masters. Please forgive me for the inconvenience. Merciless West also cupped her fists and bowed to the three palace masters. She did not mention her name and said, "Today, I just brought a young man to be tested. It's just a coincidence." "It's fine. Please wait a moment." Deputy Palace Master Guan Lan did not ask further. The Yuqian Palace did not ask too much either. After nodding to Merciless West, they walked slowly into the hall. The middle-aged man who led the way nodded slightly and left quietly. Guan Lan, Yin Lu, and Yinding walked to the center of the hall. Guan Lan, who was slightly staggering, was in the middle of the hall. Deputy Palace Master Yin Lu was on the left, and Yinding was on the right. At this moment, everyone in the hall was looking at the three vice palace masters. "Is the test going to start?" Su Yi muttered in his heart, feeling a little nervous for no reason. He had already promised Shi Wuqing that he would pass the test. If he couldn't pass the test of Yuqian Palace, it would be a little embarrassing. Okay, let's start the test. Those who are not involved, step back. Those who want to be tested, step forward. This time, it was Deputy Palace Master Yinding who spoke. He looked at the young people in the hall, and his expression softened. Hearing this, Bai Mingshan, Jian Wanyin, and Elder Su Yun nodded to the disciples beside them and stepped back. The test is very simple. I'll tell you how to do it. Just relax and do your best. Some people might look down on you. Don't embarrass yourself. Merciless West did not transmit her voice this time. Her voice was faint, as if she was hinting at something. Su Yi looked at Bai Mingshan and Jian Wanyin of the Heavenly Xian sect. He could understand the meaning behind Merciless West's words. Jian Wanyin and Bai Mingshan could also understand it. However, it was different now. It seemed that after seeing Merciless West's badge, they had some reservations. Moreover, there were three deputy palace masters present. Chapter 699. There was also a hint of mockery in the corner of his eyes. Although it wasn't appropriate for them to say anything, both Bai Mingshan and Jian Wanyin believed that an ordinary-looking kid wouldn't be a match for the outstanding disciples in their sect. They couldn't be compared and would be slapped in the face later. Although not all of the young disciples from the three major forces were present, there were still a few who were looking at him with disdain and hostility. They were originally arrogant because they didn't need to line up, so they naturally had a sense of superiority. When they suddenly saw Su Yi come in, they were a little unhappy. Moreover, when they saw how the Yuqian Palace treated Merciless West with such respect, their sense of superiority suddenly became inexplicably extreme. They secretly looked at Su Yi with some unconcealable disdain. Su Yi's gaze swept across the crowd. The gazes of these large sects and factions landed in his eyes, causing him to frown slightly. Soon after, he did not act courteously as he lifted his eyes slightly. A faint, undisguised coldness swept across his eyes. It seems that many people are waiting to see you make a fool of yourself. Merciless West's faint voice continued to whisper in Su Yi's ear. She stood with her hands behind her back and didn't deliberately lower her voice. It was as if she didn't care about these people from the three major forces from the beginning. This kind of test, what is it testing for? Su Yi asked Merciless West weakly. He didn't know what the test of the Yuqian Palace was testing for. If it tested talent like the Sacred Mountain, then he might really be ridiculed by these guys later. Aha! Bai Mingshan and Jian Wanyin laughed when they heard Su Yi's question. He didn't even know what the test was. This was a bumpkin. They didn't know where he came from. It seemed like he wouldn't be able to pass the test. Xinjiang Gate, Heavenly Xian sect, and Blue Cloud sect, there were also young disciples from the Blue Cloud sect who looked at him with mocking eyes. So this guy didn't know anything and came to the Yuqian Palace for the test. He was really overestimating himself. First BD post, as a disciple of the Blue Cloud sect, you must abide by the rules of the Blue Cloud sect. Two young disciples of the Blue Cloud sect revealed a sarcastic look on their faces. Elder Su Yun saw this and immediately opened her mouth to speak in a low voice. Her voice was loud enough for several disciples of the Blue Cloud sect to hear. When the two Blue Cloud sect disciples heard this, their expressions immediately turned solemn, and they restrained their expressions. Merciless West ignored the crowd and replied to Su, "The test is very simple. For warriors, it tests yuan qi and physical talent. For alchemists, refiners, and soul controllers, the process is slightly simpler. However, the difficulty is far greater. Strictly speaking, it tests the level and quality of one's soul. It's just a soul test. Su Yi's eyes moved slightly, and he immediately relaxed a little. He said to Merciless West, "Don't worry, not just any Tom, Dick, or Harry can laugh at you. Kid, who are you calling a Tom, Dick, or Harry?" A sharp voice filled with anger was heard. Su Yi didn't lower his voice, and it spread in the hall. Those present weren't experts like by Mingshan or Jian Wanyan. The young people here were all alchemists, refiners, and soul controllers with powerful soul strength. Even if Su Yi's voice was oppressive, it wouldn't escape their ears. Hearing Su Yi's words, it was obvious that he was scolding them. Immediately, some people couldn't restrain their anger. Hearing this, Su Yi followed the gaze and saw that the one who spoke was a young disciple of the Heavenly Shin sect. This young disciple looked to be in his 20s. He stood behind the young man in the purple robe. He was dressed in a gorgeous robe, and his face was quite handsome. However, at this moment, his eyes were fixed on Su Yi with a cold gaze. Whoosh whoosh, at this moment in the hall, almost everyone's eyes were on Su Yi. Among them, there was a strange coldness in their eyes. They were all young disciples who disdained Su Yi. Seeing the disciple of the Heavenly Shin sect speak, Jian Wanyan's eyes were calm, and the corner of his mouth was slightly raised. He didn't have any intention of scolding him. Instead, he looked at Su Yi indifferently. "Whoever speaks, you can choose whether you are a Tom or a Tom." Su Yi's expression was calm as he spoke to the young man in the robe, looking at the Heavenly Shin sect disciple. Su Yi's reply could not be any clearer. Immediately, the Heavenly Profound sect's young man's face turned completely dark. His face alternated between green and red, and a chilling aura appeared in his cold eyes. He sneered, "Brat, how dare you scold me? So what if I scold you? I'm here to test, and I haven't offended any of you. I don't know why you so-called large sects have such a fragile heart. Have I stepped on anyone's tail? Why do you have to jump up and make trouble for yourselves? Then again, so what if you so-called large sect disciples are disciples? I've never taken you seriously." The words of the young man from the Heavenly Shin sect made Su Yi's face turn completely gloomy. He looked coldly at the young man and said faintly, "As for you, I don't take you seriously at all." Su Yi's words were sonorous and powerful, echoing in the hall. Suddenly, the hall became abnormally quiet. Even the 3 vice palace lords of the Heavenly Drive Palace were a bit stunned. Merciless West was also stunned. He looked at Su Yi and gave him a thumbs up. His eyes were full of admiration. This was the first time he had seen someone scold someone so sonorous and powerful. It was a unique style. Su Yi's words made the young man in the robe's face turn green and red. The corners of his eyes twitched, and he almost couldn't breathe. As one of the most outstanding disciples in the Heavenly Shin sect, and as a soul controller, he was highly valued in the Heavenly Shin sect. No disciple of the same generation dared to be disrespectful to him. Even the elders of the Heavenly Shin sect were polite to him. Yet now, an unknown brat that seemed to be even younger than him had appeared out of nowhere. Yet he didn't put him in his eyes and ignored him like this. How could he endure this? "Kid, you're courting death." The young man couldn't bear it anymore. His face twitched a little, but he was still one of the most outstanding disciples of the Heavenly Shin sect. He immediately controlled his loss of self-control. His expression turned cold. To deal with such a person, he should use his strength to crush him. After his cold words, he moved and immediately pounced at Su Yi. Boom! The young man shook his arm, and a palm print covered in yuan qi slammed towards Su Yi's chest with a fierce momentum. Chapter 700. You're courting death. Just as Su Yi's pneuma was about to condense into his fist, a cold voice sounded. Boom! The Green Emperor's figure had quietly appeared in front of Su Yi. The green light was dazzling, and the aura of the Demon Emperor realm swept out directly. He was about to attack and would not allow anyone to attack Su-yi. The sudden and unreserved Demon Emperor realm aura from the Green Emperor's body immediately changed the expression of a youth from the Tianxian sect who was about to attack. The circulating pneuma in his body was also blocked. His heart trembled violently, and he almost fell to the ground. Oh no, the Demon Emperor realm. At this moment, Jian Wanyan's expression changed greatly. Even he could not sense the extraordinary Demon Emperor realm aura. This disciple must not be harmed. Jian Wanyan immediately rushed out and pulled the robed disciple back. His figure also directly blocked in front of him. How dare you? What do you think the heavenly palace is? Almost at the same time, a fierce and majestic voice spread in the main hall. But such a voice was like a clap of thunder in the ears of everyone present, shaking their spirits. Everyone was shocked, especially Jian Wanyan and the Green Emperor. The voice was especially loud in their ears. Su-yi was also deeply moved. The voice came from Deputy Palace Master Guanlan. With just a voice, he was able to intimidate Jian Wanyan and the Green Emperor. The strength of Deputy Palace Master Guanlan was absolutely unfathomable. With Deputy Palace Master Guanlan's reprimand, Jian Wanyan's expression darkened. He pulled a robed youth who was still in shock and stepped back. But then he looked at the Green Emperor, Su-yi, and Merciless West and said quietly, "Well, the Tianxian sect will remember." Humph! Seeing Jian Wanyan's expression, the Green Emperor snorted indifferently. He was from the Demon Clan and was not afraid of the Tianxian sect. Merciless West glanced at him and ignored him. What was the Heavenly Profound sect? He even dared to kill people from the Heavenly Dragon sect, which was on the same level as the Sacred Mountain. Moreover, he had killed quite a few of them. What's more, the Heavenly Profound sect was much weaker in comparison. Su-yi's eyes were calm, but there was a tenacity in them. Su-yi's clenched fists slowly loosened. He had always known that this was a world where the strong preyed on the weak. If it weren't for Merciless West and the Green Emperor by his side today, Jian Wanyan wouldn't even put him in his eyes. His strength was still far from enough. He had to become a true expert as soon as possible. However, looking at Su-yi's calm gaze and expression, it caused Jian Wanyan and the young man in robes to feel even more displeased in their hearts. Their eyes darkened even more. Bai Mingshan's gaze also swept over Jian Wanyan and the Green Emperor. "Senior, I am being tested for Soul Controller." Su-yi bowed. His attitude was neither servile nor overbearing. Then he walked lightly to Vice Palace Master Guanlan's line and lined up behind the spotless girl in the white dress. As Su-yi lined up, everyone in the hall looked a little surprised. They did not expect Su-yi to be tested for a Soul Controller. After all, a Soul Controller was important. "Umph." Jian Wanyan snorted coldly, as if he was displeased in his heart. The young man in robes at the front of the line looked even colder. The arrogance and sense of superiority that he had just regained disappeared when Su-yi was also tested for a Soul Controller. Vice Palace Master Guanlan's gaze fell on Su-yi, but he was also very calm. The spotless girl from the Blue Cloud sect turned her head slightly. On her delicate and beautiful face, her starry eyes nodded slightly at Su-yi, as if to acknowledge the unfriendly attitude of the two young men from the Blue Cloud sect. Looking at the woman's attitude, the expression on Su-yi's face softened, and he nodded in acknowledgement. Su-yi's personality had always been the kind of person who would respect others tenfold if they respected him. "Then let's begin. It seems that this is the first time you have come to the Imperial Palace to be tested. Given your status, there is no need to test your yuan qi or your talent. Let's directly test your talent as an alchemist." Chapter 701. In the corner of the hall, there were a few Juqian Palace disciples who pushed over 3 simple, modeled stone tables. The tables were waist-high and about 5 feet long. They were placed in front of the 3 Vice Palace Masters. Then, the Juqian Palace disciples bowed and continued to retreat to the side. The three vice palace masters each placed a square stone the size of a baby on the stone table. It was said to be a square stone, yet its entire body was pure white like jade, and it was crystalline and translucent like a crystal. Moreover, it was densely covered with talisman markings and diagrams. A faintly discernible aura spread out from it, causing one's soul to fluctuate. It was very pleasing to the eye. This is a soul-testing crystal. You must relax during the test. Do not resist. This test will not hurt you at all. It will only test the quality of your soul. Vice Palace Master Yin Ding spoke first. He said to the first young disciple of the Heavenly Xian sect, "Take 3 steps forward and report your name, age, and sect. The others are not to disturb." Hearing this, the young man from the Heavenly Xian sect immediately stepped forward. There was a little nervousness in his eyes, but more excitement and confidence. He took 3 steps forward and bowed respectfully to Vice Palace Master Yinding. He said respectfully, "Zhao Chuanan, disciple of the Heavenly Xian sect, 20 years old. Thank you, Vice Palace Master." And then begin the test. Vice Palace Master Yinding nodded. His eyes were gentle. Mysterious hand seals began to form in his hands. His robe fluttered slightly, and his aura began to fluctuate. On the side, Vice Palace Master Yin Lu also began to form hand seals. In front of him was another young man from the Heavenly Xian sect. As Vice Palace Master Yin Lu's last hand seal fell, light spread from his palm and touched the soul-testing crystal in front of him. Voila! Suddenly, the soul-testing crystal began to shine. The light grew brighter and brighter. It was dazzling and pure white. The mysterious runes on it flickered continuously and released a vast aura. Finally, the light shone brightly and the aura fluctuated. It was like a light screen that enveloped the young man. Then, the light screen completely enveloped the young man like a light cocoon. The light was so dazzling that the young man could not look directly at it. He could not help but close his eyes. Boom! The young man, called Zhao Chuanan from the Tianxian sect, who was standing in front of Vice Palace Master Yinding, was also enveloped in the same light cocoon. Wisps of faintly discernible light, like spirit snakes, surged into Zhao Chuanan's glabella. As the faintly discernible light surged in, suddenly, an invisible fluctuation began to ripple between Zhao Chuanan's brows. It was a kind of spiritual fluctuation. After that, the soul measuring stone suddenly flickered with dazzling arcs of lightning, as if there were lightning flashing and thunder rumbling within it. Finally, 2 moon-like rays of light appeared on the soul measuring stone. The 5 arcs of lightning on the soul measuring stone were extremely dazzling. Seeing the 5 arcs of lightning and the 2 moon-like lights, Vice Palace Master Yinding nodded and said, "Zhao Chuanan, middle 2nd grade weapon refiner, royal grade soul, pass the test. Come forward, drip a drop of blood as a guide, and your soul as a witness to be engraved with the Imperial Sky Palace's registration badge." When Vice Palace Lord Yun Ding's voice rang out, the disciples of Imperial Sky Palace at the side of the hall were also recording the test records. The light on the soul-measuring stone gradually faded and returned to normal. "Thank you, Vice Palace Lord Yun Ding." Zhao Chuanan opened his eyes and was pleasantly surprised. Not all craftsmen could pass the test of the Imperial Palace, not to mention that he had an extraordinary king-level soul. He was overjoyed and wanted to carve the badge of the Imperial Palace. A bronze badge appeared in Vice Palace Lord Yun Ding's hand, showing 2 corners. He began to engrave the registration badge for the disciple. "Royal Great Soul, not bad, not bad." Hearing Vice Palace Lord Yun Ding's words, Elder Jian Wanyan of the Heavenly Mystery Sect smiled slightly. Royal Great Soul power was indeed not bad. "Wu Yu, advanced 2nd grade alchemist, Royal Grade Soul, pass the test." Vice Palace Lord Yin Lu's voice rang out faintly from the side. The young alchemist had also passed the test. The young man's face was also filled with joy. Seeing that the 2 of them had both passed the test, and both of them had royal grade souls, many young disciples were envious. Advanced second grade alchemist. Royal grade soul, not bad, not bad. Elder Jian Wanyan's expression was very happy, and he seemed to be quite proud. Chapter 80 Most 37 New W Chapter FL Section Upper B Second Grade Alchemist, Middle Grade, Advanced Grade, Royal Grade Soul. With regard to this, Su Yi muttered to himself. His expression was rather dazed, and he was completely unable to understand. Just watch. Later, you will be tested as usual. I will tell you later. As for the results of these two trash, they're at most ordinary. Merciless West's voice rang softly in Su Yi's ears, as if he had seen Su Yi's confusion. Ordinary goods? Huh. Su Yi slightly rolled his eyes at Merciless West. He definitely did not believe Merciless West's words. This guy's standards were too high. Looking at Jian Wanyan's expression, he knew that the royal grade soul was definitely not low. Come up for the test, report your name and age, so that we can estimate your rank. Just as Su Yi was muttering in his heart, Vice Palace Lord Guanlan's voice finally rang out. The soul controller test was about to begin. Lu Xiaohu, from the Tianxin sect, 20 years old. The robed young man in the first place immediately stepped forward to stand in front of Vice Palace Lord Guanlan, his face full of confidence. Well, start the test. Just relax. The test will not hurt you at all. Vice Palace Lord Guanlan spoke, and his hand seals began to condense. Everything was like an alchemist's and a weapon refiner's test. The soul testing stone in front of him began to emit light, becoming more and more dazzling, and finally enveloped Lu Xiaohu like a cocoon of light. Under the dazzling light, Lu Xiaohu closed his eyes slightly, and there was a ripple between his eyebrows. At this moment, Jian Wanyan's eyes immediately fell on Lu Xiaohu. He seemed to have great expectations for Lu Xiaohu, and his expression was a little nervous. Bai Mingshan and Elder Su Yun's gazes also landed on him. After all, a soul controller was somewhat different from an alchemist and a weapon refiner and would receive special attention. The soul testing stone in front of Vice Palace Lord Guanlan became more and more dazzling, and even the soul testing stone trembled slightly. Then, extremely dazzling electric arcs flashed, as if there were lightning and thunder surging out from within. In the end, 3 moon-like lights appeared on the soul testing stone, and 6 dazzling electric arcs appeared on the soul testing stone. Oh! Chapter 702. Vice Palace Master Guanlan nodded approvingly when he saw the 6 lightning arcs and the 3 moon-like lights. He said, Lu Xiaohu, early 3rd grade soul controller. Royal grade soul, you have passed the test. Come forward and drip a drop of blood. With your soul as proof, you will be engraved with the Imperial Palace's registration badge. Ha ha! Jian Wanyan laughed out loud. Lu Xiaohu did not disappoint him. Bai Mingshan's eyes flickered. At Lu Xiaohu's age, he was already a beginner rank 3 soul controller. Moreover, his soul was at the royal grade. This was extremely rare and could be considered to be extremely talented. Bai Mingshan felt a little uncomfortable that he was unknowingly suppressed by the heavenly mystery sect. Elder Su Yun was also shocked. A royal grade soul was extraordinary. If everything went well, the heavenly Xian sect would have another powerful soul controller in a few decades. The other young disciples were shocked and envious. A royal grade soul. What kind of soul talent was that? Thank you, Palace Master Guanlan. Everything calmed down. Lu Xiaohu opened his eyes and bowed to Vice Palace Master Guanlan. His eyes were full of pride. Royal grade soul. As he expected, he was confident in his soul talent. He would have a place in this sacred martial assembly. Soon, his name would be known throughout the central state. Royal grade soul. Seems very strong. Su Yi did not understand at all. Although the mysterious elder at the bottom of the cliff had given him a lot of information, there was nothing like this. In Xinjiang Gate, he did not look at this information. Therefore, he was completely at a loss. Thank you, Palace Master Yinding. Thank you, Palace Master Yin Lu. Zhao Chuanan and Wu Yu also received their respective badges from the Imperial Celestial Palace. They hung the badges on their shoulders and walked down joyfully. Su Yi looked curiously. He saw that the badge on Zhao Chuanan's shoulder was in the shape of two horns. It was bronze in color and had 5 lightning arcs flashing inside. The badge on Wu Yu's shoulder was exactly the same. However, it was silver-white in color, and there were also 5 brightly flickering lightning arcs. Next, Vice Palace Master Yun Ding and Vice Palace Master Yin Lu spoke again and began to test the next one. A moment later, Lu Xiaohu's Yutian Palace badge was also engraved. He walked down, but he still maintained a respectful attitude towards the purple-robed young man. He then raised his head and puffed out his chest, purposely walking past Su Yi. His eyes were filled with undisguised mockery, and he let out a cold snort. Let's see how this brat will embarrass himself later. Let's start the next one. Vice Palace Lord Guanlan spoke and continued testing the next one. Disciple of the Tianxian sect, Gong Qianxing, greets the Palace Master. I am 20 this year. Sorry for troubling you, Palace Master Guanlan. The purple-robed youth from the heavenly profound sect took a few steps forward. His expression was still calm. His deep facial features were intoxicating, and there was an invisible aura around him. Su Yi was also paying attention. He had a feeling that this young man was not ordinary. All right, let's begin. Vice Palace Master Guanlan had good eyesight. He looked at Gong Qianxing with a gentle smile on his face. Even without checking, he had already shown his appreciation. According to the original procedure, Vice Palace Master Guanlan began to test Gong Qianxing. At this moment, Jian Wanyan's expression suddenly became extremely focused. He stared intently at the soul-testing stone, and the look in his eyes was much more nervous than Lu Xiaohu's. Only Jian Wanyan knew that Lu Xiaohu was one of the most important disciples of the heavenly profound sect and the future of the sect. But this time, the real core of the heavenly profound sect was the young man who was being tested by the soul-controlling master. Gong Qianxing was the real peak of the younger generation of the heavenly profound sect and the real future of the sect. Enveloped by the light cocoon, Gong Qianxing's eyes were tightly closed. His robe fluttered slightly, and a spiritual fluctuation began to slowly ripple out from between his eyebrows. Boom! Almost at the same time, the entire hall shook violently for no reason. This kind of tremor was different. Not only did the entire hall shake, but it also made everyone's heart and soul tremble for no reason. Rumble. Just as everyone sensed the difference and their expressions changed abruptly, the soul-testing origin stone in front of Vice Palace Master Guanlan suddenly began to pulse. A formless energy spread out. The light was bright and dazzling like the sun. At the same time, outside the windows of the hall, the light suddenly began to dim, an invisible energy of heaven and earth rippled. Dark clouds gathered in the sky, blotting out the sun and dimming the land. Boom! In Section 3Q of a new Chapter V9, with the Imperial Palace Division as the center, the wind and clouds surged, and the sky changed color, and dark clouds covered the sky. What's going on? Feeling this scene, with the Imperial Palace Division as the center, many people in Zhongzhou City were shocked, and there were many exclamations. Oh, inside the Imperial Palace Division, in the testing hall, the roars of beasts were like thunder, and there were faint shadows of beasts coming out from the soul testing stone. A terrifying spiritual fluctuation also swept out like a storm. Such a movement had completely covered the movements of the two youths who were testing the alchemist and the weapon refiner, and they had to stop the testing. With such an amazing movement, even Vice Palace Master Yin Lu and Vice Palace Master Yun Ding were shocked. Immediately, the soul-testing stone shone brightly, and 3 dazzling moon halos appeared, and there were 6 lightning fluctuations. If one looked carefully, even the 7th was faintly discernible. In the hall, many people were stunned, and many young disciples turned pale, and their souls trembled. This was a kind of pure spiritual pressure that came from the soul. Even Jian Wanyan, Bai Mingshan, and Elder Su Yun were affected. In the whole hall, at this moment, Only Su Yi and the woman in the white dress did not seem to be affected much, but the look in their eyes was also extremely shocked. What a strong spiritual fluctuation! Su Yi was shocked. This spiritual fluctuation was not ordinary, and it carried an absolute spiritual pressure. No wonder he had always felt that Gong Qianxing's aura was not ordinary. Under such a movement, everyone was shocked. Jian Wanyan's expression changed, and then he became extremely proud. He held his head high, and a look of surprise appeared on his face. Jian Wanyan's gaze fell on the soul testing stone in front of Vice Palace Master Guanlan. Looking at the movement on the soul testing stone, he could not help but feel his heart beat faster. He said, "You did not disappoint. You really did not disappoint. Our heavenly mystery sect will have an absolute genius soul controller." Hearing Jian Wanyan's words and looking at the movement on the soul testing stone, Bai Mingshan frowned slightly. Above Zhongzhou City, the wind and clouds surged, but it did not last for long, and then it slowly disappeared. Outside the testing hall, the light gradually grew brighter, and the wind blew away the clouds. Gong Qianxing, beginner grade 3 soul controller, quasi-heaven grade soul. Chapter 703. Su Yi didn't know what a quasi-heaven grade soul represented, but judging from everyone's reaction, it wasn't hard to tell that this quasi-heaven grade soul was terrifyingly powerful. Tianxian sect has produced many talents this time. I'm afraid it won't be long before Tianxian sect has another powerful soul controller. Congratulations, Elder Su Yun said to Jian Wanyan with a smile. Haha, thank you for your kind words, Elder Su Yun. Jian Wanyan didn't stand on ceremony at all. A quasi-heaven grade soul was extremely rare. Anyone who could possess a quasi-heaven grade soul was destined to become a powerful soul controller. Congratulations, congratulations. Bai Mingshan was secretly unhappy, but he had no choice but to force a smile and congratulate Jian Wanyan. You're welcome. Jian Wanyan was in a good mood. On the examination platform, Gong Qianxing began to engrave the badge. Everyone looked at him in awe and envy. Let's continue. Vice Palace Master Yun Ding and Vice Palace Master Yin Lu were forced to stop the examination. They were shocked, but they continued. Soon, Gong Qianxing's badge was engraved. He bowed to Vice Palace Master Guanlan and turned to leave. Gong Qianxing's figure was tall and straight. His expression was still calm. His eyes were deep, as if nothing had happened. Su Yi looked at Gong Qianxing's badge. It was golden and had a triangular shape. 6 lightning bolts were dazzling, and the 7th was faintly visible. It was very similar to the badge on Merciless West's shoulder. Next, Vice Palace Master Guanlan continued to speak. His eyes were still rippling. It was rare to find a soul controller who could detect a quasi-heaven grade soul. Disciple of Blue Cloud Sect, Li Qingwei, greets Palace Master Guanlan. I'm 19 this year. Sorry for troubling you. The soft voice was like the sound of nature. The beautiful girl in a simple dress walked over and bowed. Her starry eyes were as clear as water. Li Qingwei. What nice name. Su Yi secretly remembered this name. Just now when Gong Qianxing's soul suppression swept out, he also felt the reaction of the woman in front of him. At this moment, he faintly had a premonition that perhaps this was another terrifying master. Bai Mingshan, Jian Wanyan, and the others were also paying attention. The Blue Cloud sect was only testing one soul controller, which made them very curious. Just relax. Everything is normal. Vice Palace Master Guanlan nodded with a gentle smile, as if he was afraid that Gong Qianxing's extraordinary performance would put pressure on Li Qingwei and affect her performance. Disciple understands. Li Qingwei nodded, her eyes calm. All right, let's begin. Vice Palace Master Guanlan was secretly a little surprised. He felt that the girl in front of him was not ordinary. He formed a hand seal and began to examine her. The testing procedures were all the same. The soul testing origin stone began to move. Resplendent rays of light transformed into a cocoon of light that enveloped Li Qingwei. Under the dazzling light, Li Jiuwei's eyes were immediately closed. As Li Jiawei closed her eyes, a soul fluctuation slowly overflowed from between her eyebrows, blooming with some light. Under the overflow of this soul fluctuation, the soul testing origin stone's light burst out in an instant. At the same time, there was a thunderous roar of a beast. Oh, the beast's roar was like thunder, and many people in the hall immediately jumped. This movement was too big. Boom! Almost at the same time, the hall trembled, and the soul testing origin stone trembled. Suddenly, it was dark outside the window. Only the soul testing origin stone was shining brightly like the sun. Rumble! Faintly, the sound of thunder and lightning could be heard from an unknown place. In the hall, several experts' breathing suddenly became heavy, including Merciless West and Green Emperor. Merciless West, Green Emperor by Mingshan, Jian Wanyin, and the others were all experts. At this moment, they immediately felt that the energy in the world was fluctuating. An obscure yet powerful soul pressure was spreading out from the young, graceful, and energetic figure. Rumble. With the imperial palace as the center, the world fell into darkness again. Large patches of dark clouds gathered, and lightning flashed in the sky, gradually spreading across the entire city. What's going on? Countless people looked up, and someone exclaimed, "It seems to be from the imperial palace." This was already the second time. Many people felt the aura and looked in the direction of the imperial palace. What's going on inside? Especially those who were queuing outside the imperial palace. They could all feel that the sudden change came from inside the imperial palace. Vice Palace Master Yun Ding and Vice Palace Master Yin Lu's testing was forced to stop again. Their expressions changed, and their eyes shone with excitement and anticipation. The two Vice Palace Masters clenched their fists nervously. Was there going to be another extraordinary soul controller in this test? The soul testing stone shone brightly. Everything was exactly the same as Gong Qinxing's test. It's also a quasi-heaven grade soul. Looking at the movement on the soul testing stone, Jian Wanyin and Bai Mingshan both sucked in a breath of cold air. This female disciple of the Blue Cloud sect actually had a quasi-heaven grade soul. Elder Su Yun's eyes were also very nervous. For a soul controller, the quality of one's soul was the most important. It was equivalent to a martial artist's talent. It was even more important. The higher the quality of one's soul, the greater the potential of a soul controller. If Li Qingwei had enough quality of soul, with the resources of the Blue Cloud sect, she would be able to become a powerful expert in the world. At that time, she would be able to bring the Blue Cloud sect to greater heights. In this world, the strong were respected, and it was the same for the major forces. A soul controller possessed terrifying strength. For a major force like the Blue Cloud sect, a powerful soul controller was especially important. In the end, the competition between the various major powers was, to a large extent, a competition of how many powerful soul controllers they had. It doesn't seem to have stopped. Could it be? Bai Mingshan said in surprise. The soul testing stone was still moving. Hearing this, Jian Wanyin and many other people's hearts beat violently. Gong Qinxing, who had always been calm, was no longer calm at this moment. He stared at the movement on the soul testing stone. His deep eyes were filled with disbelief and shock. His gaze became somewhat complicated. Is there really going to be a heaven-grade soul? Vice Palace Master Wanlan, Vice Palace Master Yin Lu, and Vice Palace Master Yun Ding also stared at the soul-testing origin stone. Their hearts couldn't help but pound. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.